Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to this round table. My name is Ashok Gulati. I'm a student of agriculture primarily and looking into, I should start by saying when I was a student, perhaps in 70s, late 60s, the biggest issue in the country was roti kapda makan. याद है मनोज कुमार? So many of the young students were so influenced at that time the need for roti because country was passing through tough times. So we committed ourselves to agriculture. India should not be starving and we need to increase production. There were droughts and all this. And many of the best brains of that time in policy making were in agriculture. I remained stuck to that for 40 years in my life. And then now when we see we are the largest exporter of rice in the world, mountains of grains with Food Corporation of India, and we are giving free wheat and rice to more than 800 million people, we thought now is the time also to look into we should be clothed better. But there were some entrepreneurs, your Sarla madam, who in 74 started off from 15 ladies sewing together. So happy to see that more than 1 lakh is the employment today in your enterprise. What are the issues we are talking about? My job is in 5 minutes to give you the introduction to this topic and what we are likely to be discussing, and where we need your answers and your observations, comments, very critical ones, because at ICRIER, we are likely to be with this topic for the next 2 years. At least we have committed ourselves that we will be working, so there is a team fully dedicated to it. What is the issue? Issue when we look at the textile and apparel sector. After agriculture, it is the biggest employer, literally 45 million people depend on that. And they are not engineers making chips and exporting Apple phones. They are the ones who are at rather just a little above perhaps the agriculturist, looking for employment and productive employment, sustainable employment in the formal sector if they can get, then we will be doing great justice to that entire 45 million workforce. That is one thing that attracts us. What has been the growth pattern and what is the priority to the sector that the government has given? If you look in the last 12, 13 years from 2010, 11 onwards roughly, the growth, you may say all is well. Textiles and apparel sector in the national accounts, actually they include leather also into the same. In real terms has been growing at about 6% per annum, right? If you remove the COVID year, then it becomes 7.1, 7.2%. But let's say including the COVID year, 6%, and that's roughly the manufacturing rate of growth. So we are doing more or less okay. But it's highly volatile. At one time it is 20%, next time it is 2%. And that creates a lot of uncertainty into the game. But when we look at the export side, and that is where the whole battle globally is capturing the markets. Whether it is the Trump tariff phenomenon or other countries, everybody is looking at where the markets are. Because if you get the markets, then the supply lines can be streamlined. And that's where exports, if you look from 2000 onwards, the exports share of textiles and apparel together, India is about 4% of the global gain. And in apparel alone, it's about 3%. Now, 3% for such a large country, and also looking at the share between 2000 and 2024-25, roughly, it has remained more or less same, 3%. Whereas in the same period, countries like Bangladesh, don't talk about China, but Bangladesh next door, its share was 2% in 2000. Today it is 9.69, roughly 10%. Vietnam, which was 1% in 2000, today is holding 6% share. China, which was 17% in 2000, went to about 35% by 2010, and interestingly has come down now to about 29% or so. So you look at the situation, China, which used to be behind us in per capita income even in 1981, of course, that's the biggest success story of the last 50 years. But what is holding us back even to compete with Bangladesh or Vietnam? That is one big question that we have with us on the table. Government has kept our target of exports of textile and apparel, correct me if I'm wrong, by 2030, $100 billion. Apparel by 40. Apparel 40 and total T&A $100 billion. Where we are today, apparel in 24-25, we are about $16 billion. And T&A together, we are at about $37 billion. And if you look at the last 15-20 years trend of exports, this seems to be a very ambitious target. It's great to keep high targets, but what is the strategy behind that we are going to formulate so that we can achieve those ambitious targets? That's where I'm grateful that he has agreed to come and give us some guidance on how we are going to achieve those targets. But also we would love to hear from the exporters because they are the real people. And if we keep garments in the forefront, and if we capture those markets and our share goes from 3% to 6%, 7%, 10% globally, then I think many of the back-end things can be streamlined. So what are the things? I think there will be a presentation by ICRIER team on this. I don't want to steal their thunder, but we have looked at and still looking at what is the cost of capital in China versus Vietnam versus Bangladesh, because you need a scale. Some people created the scale. Shahi exports created a scale over 50 years, but we can't wait for 50 years for another Shahi to come or Pearl to come. We need 10, 20 of such big players in the game. Now, how do we do that? Can we subsidize capital at more or less similar rates at which China or Vietnam is getting? This garment sector is a very labor-intensive sector. And that's the beauty of it, that you can create massive employment, which is formal, which is sustainable, permanent. How do we get labor in comparative terms vis-a-vis Bangladesh next door? Some of you are investing in Bangladesh and Vietnam. We would love to hear, why have you gone there? Your own investments you're putting up there, what attracted you there? Why can't we create that type of environment here? And that's a question I think we have to help the government to look into this and find out what is the best way forward. So these are some of the questions we are dealing with, and we do feel India has a potential trade policy. If Bangladesh was getting duty-free access to EU market, and when we are negotiating our FTA with EU, why shouldn't we put duty-free access of Indian garments to EU as a top priority? If we can do that, hopefully we can get some big access to market there. So there are tariff issues, there are capital issues, there are labor issues, and there could be some other, logistics and other things that may have to be streamlined. Last point that I want to put on the table, and we will hear more from Kansalji, is PM Mitra. This is the latest, I would say, last almost 3 years now, or 2 years, 2.5 years. So for the last 2 years, government is trying to create 7 PM Mitras. It's a sort of integrated parks. What is the vision about that? What is the timeline for that? Because the world is not going to wait for us for 10 years. We have to get our acts together and move fast. And can the exporters help the government in bringing that together quickly, fast, and more productive? So these are some of the questions that we will be discussing for the next 3 hours. And the team will stay on this course for the next 2 years minimum, if not more. So your guidance, your observations, your inputs into that, we will be extremely helpful, because we will be extremely grateful that, because we can take the message, ICRIER is a policy think tank, and we do interact with the government at different levels. And therefore, if there is something in the interest of the country and I see jobs and productive jobs and reasonably good jobs as one of the major outcomes of this, so if we can give all sorts of support and incentives to chip manufacturers or Apple manufacturers and export that and turn around within 4 years, 5 years, we have done that. Why can't we do that in garments? That's where people at the bottom of the pyramid will gain the maximum. So that's the ultimate objective. And we'll take this message all the way up with the government, with whosoever is in the corridors of power and policy making, but in a constructive manner, not combative manner. And that's our bottom line and rule of the game. I will stop here and look forward to a detailed, somewhat 20 minutes presentation that ICRIER team has prepared. And because Kansalji said that he would first like to hear, and then, hi, thank you for coming, please. I've just given the introduction to the topic, and more details the ICRIER team will be presenting in 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, 15 slides. There is a big report. We have already worked on that for more than 6 months, the entire value chain from farm to foreign. And anybody can download it from the link. But if somebody needs a hard copy, then they will have to come to our office, and we'll be happy to share that.
Morning,
The
everyone.
team that has been working on this topic, Sulakshna, Ayushi, Ria, Ritika, you can raise your hands so that people recognize you. And Sulakshna will be giving the presentation, otherwise it will become a relay race. Yeah, go ahead, please. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to give our presentation today in this roundtable conference from farm to foreign saga of Indian textile and apparel sector. Along with me, I have my colleagues Ayushi, Ria, Ritika, and we are working under the leadership of Professor Gulati. And firstly, to give a glimpse of the textile and apparel sector, as Sir has already given in his initial remarks, the sector contributes 2.3% to our GDP and 12% to our merchandise export, and it employs over 45 million people directly, which is second after agriculture in terms of employment. And if we need to look at the sector's performance, the average annual growth rate, which is given in figure 1, for the textile and apparel sector, we have looked into the gross value added growth rate in terms of average annual growth rate at constant prices. We can see that the growth rate is at a rate of 6%. And if we exclude the COVID period, it's growing at a good rate of 7.3%. However, year-wise, if we look, there is a huge volatility, which for any sector is not a good sign. But the key question that I would like to take to your attention to is the export scenario, India's textile and apparel export scenario. And the key point here is that India's share has been remaining stagnant across the years. So in figure 2 here, we have compared the major global apparel exporting countries, China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and India. And across the decade from 2000 to 2023, we have looked how their market shares have varied. So if we look at China first, they have been dominant, and in 2010, they have reached 35% market share in apparel exports, but their share has been going down to 30%. And if we look at Bangladesh, it started at a mere 2% in the year 2000, but currently they are at 10%. And Vietnam, for that matter, mere 1%, it started in the year 2000, and currently they are 6%. And India has been hovering constantly at 3%, 2.8%. So the key question that our team would like to put here is why India could not capture this space vacated by China, while our competitors like Bangladesh and Vietnam could do that. And this question is all the more important today because the government of India has set a target of 100 billion textile and apparel exports by the year 2030. And apparel, we have to reach 40 billion by the year 2030. So again, here also we have looked into our performance, India's performance from 2000 to 2025. So we can see that it took us 25 years to add 25 billion to our exports. And in another 5 years, we are wishing, currently we are at around 36.9 billion, and we look forward to 100 billion in another 5 years. So is this an unrealistic dream, or how can we make that work? What India needs, right? So another point which I would like to highlight here is that India is at a rare inflection point right now. We have favorable access at US given the reciprocal tariff, and we have completed our free trade agreement with UK, and negotiations are going on with EU, and textile is a prominent factor there. What India needs to do domestically is we need to scale up, we need to fast track our integration of the textile and apparel supply chain. And to understand this further, we conducted a research and came up with a report which examines the structural and policy challenges impeding India's textile and apparel sector, pressing concerns of the stakeholders across the value chain, and what could be the policy dimension that we need to implement to position India as a global leader to enhance our export competitiveness. All these we have looked in our report. And for this, we have used the 5F framework, and it is the heart of our research. We have used mixed method approach, combining data analysis, field visits, stakeholder consultation, included all that, and assessed the performance, competitiveness, and policy environment across farm, factory, fabric, fashion, and foreign. So integrating all this, we have compartmentalized our findings across the 5F for easier understanding, starting with farm. how the gene revolution that we once had in cotton was killed across the years. So in this particular graph, we can see that in 2002, India adopted the BT cotton technology, and the AAGR was growing, both the production and yield was growing at 10% AAGR. And it was all okay until 2014. And if you look post 2014, you can see it is plateauing down. So what is the reason? And currently, we are a net importer of cotton in the present year. And if we compare our yields right now, it's 435 kilogram per hectare. If we compare that to our competitors, USA, China, it's almost up to 2,000 kilograms per hectare. So where are we lagging behind? The bottlenecks here are mostly the stagnation in terms of releasing the herbicide-tolerant BT cotton varieties. And for this, appellate authority is the GEAC, Genetic Engineering Approval Committee. But still, there are multiple layers in it. There are state-level bodies associated, FSAI associated. So all this delays the technology adoption or decision-making process for that matter. Right. Another point that weakens our adoption is the IPR protection rights that we have, which disincentivizes. So we know that the BT cotton technology is private sector and which is licensed to our companies. But then again, we have done like the trade fees has been abolished, there has been a cap, and there is a price control order which happened. All this led to disincentivizing the innovations in this particular sector. So these are our findings, the bottlenecks which are there in the farm sector. Coming to factory or the yarn part, we have analyzed the cotton yarn export destination here. And our cotton yarn exports were once 4.3 billion and currently they are 2 billion. The reason is clearly visible here in the figure. So China was our major export destination. And by 2010, 2007, and 2010, it gave duty-free access to both Pakistan and Vietnam, respectively. And after that, we lost the market share there. So we, kind of shifted our market to Bangladesh, but Bangladesh import capacity is 1/3 that of China's. So there, again, this is the clear reason why, our yarn exports have gone down in cotton especially. And from our field visits, we also came to know that there are domestic bottlenecks. There is high contamination, low fiber quality, which is there, which leads to discounted price in comparison to, USA or Brazil for that matter. And second point is the outdated machineries. One is the outdated machinery. There is lack of modernization of the spinning mills which are there. Second point is that our spinning mills are not working at the highest capacity. It's almost 70 to 75 capacity it is running on. So that is another reason. And if you look at MMF yarn segment, India, we know, has been cotton-centric, 60% cotton, 40% MMF. But globally, the consumption preferences are reversed. 30% it is cotton and 70% it is MMF. So we have not been able to tap that segment. The reasons for that will be discussed in the next slide. Coming to fabric, the third F. Here, the story is all about fragmentation of scale, decentralized MSME clusters. And the figure shows that our fabric production, the mill sector, which is the formal, integrated sector, it produces only 1.7 billion square kilometer. And the decentralized sector produces 61 billion square kilometer, out of which 38 billion is contributed by the power looms. Even then, even if India has the largest loom capacity, we are not modernized. Only, 2% of modern looms are there in India. So this again is the story that takes back fabric sector. Coming to the apparel part or the fashion part, which is the key story today. The first part is that, again, it is MSME dominated. We are dispersed. There is a lack of scale. But there is a dispersed supply chain. For example, you take the case of cotton, it grows in Gujarat or Maharashtra, then it moves down south to Tamil Nadu for getting converted to the yarn. And then it again moves back to, Gujarat for fabric production, and apparel everywhere in India, it is stitched. So this adds on to the lead time, this adds on to the logistic costs that are there, and somewhere we are lagging behind our competitors like Bangladesh in terms of this. Another part is the labor laws. We have rigid labor laws, 1948 we had. And even in terms of wage compensation for overtime, we have to pay, in India, we pay double the wage rate, but the ILO standards are 1.25 times the normal wage rates that are there. And besides this, there are compliance hurdles, like every button, be it zipper, we have to account, the exporters have to account. So this again, kind of complicates the whole procedure, which needs to be liberalized. Coming to the MMF sector in apparel, we have not been able to tap that market. Point number one being the inverted GST domestically, which is shown in figure 7 here. So we have tried to have a GST structure for cotton value chain as well as for the MMF. In cotton, we can see, be it raw material or finished good, it is constant 5% GST. When it comes to MMF, the initial raw material are taxed at 18% GST. Raw materials are more costlier than finished garments, let's say at 12% or 5%. That is one matter. Adding on to that, for imports, we have quality control orders and all these aspects which, kind of add to the costs. This is the key slide that we want to show you. India's performance, we have analyzed across, we have tried to project. So starting, India has, kind of peaked our apparel exports in 2016, 17 billion we were. And after that, there was a deceleration. From the period, if you can see the red box there we have been decelerating at an AAGR of -2%. This deceleration need to be reversed through policy. And if we continue the optimal level, the rise which was there from 2004 to 2017, there is still a chance. The AAGR is 8.5%. Still we'll reach 31 billion, which is lesser than our 40 billion target by 2030, but still 31 billion at least we can reach, right? So in the recent years, it is clear that there has been a sluggish momentum. The export momentum has gone down. And if you look at percentage-wise, cotton apparel was dominating up until 2016, but somehow MMF sector has not been able to, scale up proportionately. This again needs to be looked into. So what are the reasons for this, going down of momentum of exports? Why are we losing ground in the global apparel trade market? So is India missing out due to the lack of free trade agreement? Bangladesh, Vietnam has free trade, duty-free access to EU, which is our major export market. So why we can't have it? Is that the reason? Or is our product simply more expensive, be it labor, be it capital, access to affordable capital is the reason? Or is the ease of doing business affecting our buyer confidence? All these questions we need to look into. And also, are we losing our price, quality, and speed with respect to both Bangladesh and Vietnam, which are our competitors? So with this, compiling all these findings and bottlenecks, we have come up with few recommendations in our study. And first one being that, the textile and apparel is huge. 45 million people are employed directly and is at huge value addition also. So there is a need for a focused policy attention in this sector. First priority is we need to integrate, and that too in a fast-tracking manner, we need to integrate the 5 Fs and PM Mitra, which is a step in the right direction. That also needs to be, fast-tracked. At least 2 of the PM Mitra parks, say Virudhunagar in Tamil Nadu or Navsari in Gujarat, need to be completely export-oriented. We can also think of states like UP or MP, where there are PM Mitra parks. And if we can tap in the abundant labor supply there and convert them to completely garment-driven export center, nothing better than that. Secondly, in the domestic policy environment, we need to set our house in order. As we had discussed earlier, the MMF policy, the GST structure needs to be revised, to be revamped. Then QCOs need to be liberalized if we need to import to tap into the MMF segment. Plus, another low-hanging fruit is the simplification of procedures or the compliance burdens that are hindering the exporters which are there in India. Thirdly, we need to expand global market, not just in terms of market diversification, but also in terms of product diversification. So in market diversification, the FTA negotiations are ongoing. Textile should be at the forefront, should be prioritized. And this, particular window of opportunity with US needs to be capitalized. Only then we can, succeed there. And product diversification, we need to integrate the fashion part in our production system and meet the needs of what has been trending in the global, apparel market for that matter. Last but not the least, the cotton productivity and fiber needs to be improved. We need to have a single window clearance system, GAC, the appellate authority, and high density planting, the COLA model or the precision farming for that matter. And we also need investment in the seed R&D against pests like pink bollworm and also for the changing climate for that matter. So these are our findings, and this is the recommendation we have for discussion with all of you. But if we need to revolutionize this sector, we need some policies which will take up the scale much higher. And for this, we have some questions with you. If we can design an export-linked incentive scheme in line with our PLI scheme, which rewards, winning global markets or having a market share there. And also, can we subsidize the labor to meet the Bangladesh wage rate for that matter, liberalize our labor laws to meet that needs? And can India provide capital at a cost comparable to China, which is a 3.5%, India, it's 9% for the firms to, scale up. So with this question, before winding, I'd like to take you through our outputs in the form of report, policy brief, and op-eds. And thank you one and all for your time and attention.
Thank you, Salakshana. One of the key things you have highlighted is, can we subsidize our labor? We have Manrega, where we are spending about 63,000 crores every year. It's supposed to be off-season whenever they want something. Can we create a permanent employment base? A part of that, at least the younger people can be trained in 60 days and then engaged in this. And that would be one of the things perhaps for policy making we can think of rather than random the Manrega type of thing. Okay, we need to move on. And the person who is responsible for getting our exports zooming, Mr. Mithileshwar Thakurji, is the Secretary General, Apparel Export Promotion Council under the Ministry of Textiles. So he is the person who is continuously looking after the exports and what needs to be done. I think let's hear his views on this. The detailed CV of all the people, at least the key speakers, are in your folder, and I'll save on the time in reading the full CV, but listen to the words of wisdom from Mr. Thakur. Thank you.
A very good morning to all of you. Mr. Kansal, Additional Secretary, Minister of Textiles, Professor Gulati, distinguished members of this August gathering, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the textile sector, known for its glorious past, the rich tradition and heritage, and of course, a promising future, contributes, I think, 12 to 13% of India's industrial output and employs, of course, we all know 45 million of people directly and some 60 million odd, indirectly, has a market size of almost $175 billion, which is slated to reach a level of $350 billion by 2030. All of that we know. The most important element in the entire textile value chain, the apparel sector, I think it holds a place of prominence for two distinct reasons. One is that it has a humongous potential for employment generation and, of course, the capacity to add value. And there is a very interesting example study, I think, the employment generation capacity of RIL versus SAHI exports, that for every $2.2 million of investment, a company like Reliance Industries Limited employs only 5 persons as against 1,260 people by SAHI exports. And it is not about SAHI alone. See, any apparel manufacturing unit, that kind of a employment generation capacity it has, almost 252 times. That is unimaginable. So textile, but again, the textile sector has been a classic case of missed opportunities, and I would say irony even. With massive fiber infrastructure, the presence of entire textile value chain, minimal import dependence, the progress in design and all of that, I think it has not grown the way it should have grown. In fact, if you look at the external trade, the picture is absolutely dismal. For almost a decade or so, I think the export curve has almost plateaued. So there is something very seriously wrong, and I think it warrants some serious introspection, both on the part of the government and the industry. Of course, in recent years, government has come out with multi-pronged strategy like PLI, PM Mitra, Samarthya scheme, and has a lot of FTA engagements to have a better market access for the players. But the million-dollar question, I think that needs to be answered is that whether these government initiatives have translated into growth of the industry on the ground, and whether the industry seeks to reboot and revive the sector only on the basis of these, I would not say freebies, but support from the government alone. Of course, there are challenges. There is no denying that. See, the textile sector, I mean, unlike our global competitors, here lacks scale, vertical integration, the size of units being small, of course, lacks economy of scale, and therefore, a limited technology adoption and marked by low productivity. All that is happening. And then the archaic labor laws on the top of it, antiquated labor laws, basically discourages expansion and resulting in very small firms with a lot of informal employment. And ultimately, you suffer in terms of efficiency and productivity. You have obvious capacity constraints, which is a major stumbling block and prevents, of course, country like India from encassing any opportunity that comes. I think most of the opportunities that are coming our way will go a-begging unless we are able to ramp up our capacity. Then we have critical dependence on some of the select products and select markets. European Union, USA, and UK account for almost, I think, 71% of India's exports. Top 10 markets account for 74% of India's exports. Top 20 products account for 63% of India's exports. Our export basket is not aligned with the global trend. We end up pushing what we produce, not producing what needs to be exported. Of course, it is primarily on account of the cotton MF imbalance that we have, and it is much talked about. I would not like to dwell on that. Then you have fragmented structure in the industry. The processing and weaving segment of the value chain is pretty weak, unorganized. Then you have a scenario where cotton is grown in states like Gujarat and Maharashtra, spinning done in Tamil Nadu, again processing done in Gujarat, and then of course garmenting is all over the country. So there is a lot of back and forth leading to delays, increasing logistic cost, and therefore it what impacts what you call speed to the market. There is a 2021 BGME study where India's speed to the market, order to delivery time of 63 days compared to Bangladesh 50 days. And I think the figures might have changed over the years, but then we lose a lot of orders just because of the poor speed of market. I'll come to that later. Then again, you have shortage of labor. Shortage of labor, of course, in urban clusters mostly. Then the industry is marked by a lot of absenteeism, attrition of labor, serious skill gaps, and of course, lack of branding. You do not have Indian brands turning global. So all of that. So it's not that we have not had opportunities. China Plus One came, I think we could not capitalize that. Now you have Bangladesh Plus One opportunity. because of course political upheaval there, but it remains to be seen whether we will be able to capitalize, because we are not able to ramp up productions. So you are not in a position to basically bag orders and execute them. And then, of course, you have another opportunity coming your way because of the reciprocal tariff, of course. That keeps on changing every other day. But the point is that as of now, if the reciprocal tariff is in force, then you have a distinct advantage over countries like Bangladesh by 11% and by Vietnam by almost 20%. But with the idiosyncrasy, if I use that term, and unpredictability of Trump administration, you do not ultimately know where the tariff will settle. So that's something remains to be seen. So we need to have our strategy in place, and I think we need to think something out of the box. There are certain problems, we have obvious answers. I think capacity augmentation, PLI 2.0 industry demanded, I think that may not see the light of the day. PLI 1.0, I think we have been pushing government that I think that should be tweaked basically, because I very strongly believe that PLI was not designed for garment industry. It was for bigger players. So the threshold limit must be brought down. The value addition norm was not practical. It was 60%. It should generally 40 plus. And then, of course, year-on-year growth that is anticipated in PLI was 25%, which is not aligned to the industry norms. And of course, the export basket, which was illegal for this turnover growth and all that, was again needed to be expanded. So some changes are required. One doesn't know really what. Another thing that I would like to highlight is that we should stop manufacturing for others. The delta in apparel trade is so huge. What the value that we export from here and the ultimate price that a consumer pays in the foreign market is too huge. So we should stop manufacturing for others. We should look for branding our products. There is an estimate. We have a ambitious plan of 40 billion by 2030. The general estimate is that by the average size of the plant, manufacturing unit that we have, it would require some 1,200 new manufacturing units to come up to meet that requirement. And by average industry projection, I think you will not have more than 200 to 300. So you will be able to achieve that goal only when you have a improved UVR, unit value realization, and that can come only when you are able to brand your products. The Indian brands need to go global. We should stop manufacturing for others. I think we should emerge with global brands. So there is a need. I think we have been trying to get in touch with what you call IBEF and maybe some other agency, because we have been requesting our members to acquire all kinds of certifications. Because you need to have certifications, you need to, of course, through Bharat Text, of course, what we did is we could create a brand India image. We could project to the globe, the global community that look, Indian industry is unified. The textile industry is not working in silos. It is, there was synergy, everyone is same page. But the point is that is the overall Indian image of the textile industry that was improved. But the brands have to become global brands. You do not have a single global brand in textile. And that is, unless that happens, I think, so we have been, what we did is, we have been going, requesting all our members to acquire as much certification as they can have. We intend to MOU with Green Business Council, because we have only 13 LEED certified factories in India. Look at Bangladesh. So we have said that we should keep a target for ourselves that we will next, say 1 year, we should have at least 100 LEED certified factories. Then we are trying to, because unless you do that, I think things will not change. Then there is an urgent need of market and product diversification. Product diversification, of course, will automatically happen if this, MMF issue address and PLI is tweaked. But the market diversification, I think we need to look up to, because any downturn in the market that we export will badly impact our, foreign trade. So we need to look up to maybe Latin America, to Africa. Russia is a good market, because European brands have disappeared there because of the conflict with Ukraine. So I think there's a huge opportunity over there, particularly with the rupee trade, getting activated. Then we should explore all possibilities in Latin America. Japan, we have been engaging for quite some time, I think, in spite of the CEPA having been signed, because I think we were not targeting the products that they require and the design and trends. We have intended to partnership with WGSN. And we have an in-house team which predicts, trends for all kinds of garments. Because I think you have to, the fashion industry, the trends and designs keep changing every now and then. So you need to be, completely abreast with what is going on in the rest of the world. Then, of course, you see, there are certain economies which have obvious advantage and you can't do anything about that. There are LUCs, they can give prohibited subsidy, cash incentives. Some countries have, a very low wage structure. And of course, being LUC gives them advantage of zero duty market access. So, I mean, that is something you can't do anything about. The only way I think you can leverage, you need to leverage technology. I think there's a requirement of technology infusion, in industry. You can use Industry 4.0. I mean, you can always, in assembly line, you can employ robotics. Blockchain technology, of course, we use in traceability. You can employ, use IoT in logistics. And of course, artificial intelligence in fashion forecasting. So I think unless we do that, and unless we improve our productivity level, we will not have edge over others. Speed to the market, I think things have changed quite a lot because earlier the logistics cost was supposed to be 14% of GDP, which over the years is supposed to have come down by 7 to 8%. India's ranking in LPI, Logistic Performance Index, has improved quite a lot. It was 54 in 2013, which is now it's 36. You see there is a visible change in the port and road infrastructure. Our cargo dwell time and turnaround time are almost at par with global standards now. But having said that, after all that improvement, I think still we lag behind in terms of speed of market. So we need to do we need to address that problem sooner rather than later. There is another area, I think, which has a lot of potential for growth, that is e-commerce. Because the government has earmarked 20% of its export target in 2030 to the e-commerce, which means $200 billion. And right now, the India total e-commerce trade is not exceeding $5 billion. So I think yesterday we were discussing, in the interministerial group in Advaniji Bhavan, that there are certain policy tools that is required, because some regulatory changes, some FEMA guidelines need to change, certain, caps. Because the problem is that there are a lot of rejects and return goods in e-commerce, and there I think most of the e-commerce players end up paying duty because they are not able to correlate their exported goods with imports. So maybe there is some requirement in the courier shipping bill. Then of course RBI has come out with a draft policy where that requirement of achieving minimum 75% of the invoice value that is undergoing some change. So a proper, fast, and I think progressive e-commerce policy can drive the change, and the sectors that will benefit out of e-commerce policies, of course, garment, textile, and leather, and maybe gems and jewelry. Then, of course, we found that there is a huge skill gap. We recently discovered that there are certain items which are huge in demand, even in cotton segment, like cotton pullovers, outerwear. But then India doesn't manufacture them. There are only one or two companies that manufacture. When we try to delve deep into it, we found that higher SAM items, standard allowed minute items, which requires little complicated, sewing and all of that India doesn't manufacture. So I think we need, in the skilling, I think we can introduce some kind of product-specific skilling, so that some trainers could be, trained to manufacture those products alone. Because ultimately those products are in huge demand. So even if we are not able to, ramp up our MMF garment, at least even in cotton, the products which are in high demand, I think we can meet those requirements by producing those. And I think it only requires, that skill gap to be bridged. Then of course, but all said and done, I think the major thing is that the policy making, the government and the industry, I think, has to adopt a holistic approach. I think there are too many players in the textile sector, and if I can say so, without holding me back and without mincing words, I think many a times they work at cross purposes. It baffles me, why do we push export of yarn? I mean, need not prohibit export of yarns, of course, but then why should we promote export of yarns? It baffles me. And then, you find that a fiber unit would try to protect itself at the expense of everybody in the downstream industry. I mean, and that approach is of, every segment. So I think we need to look at a larger picture, come together and work in public interest, not necessarily in the interest of that particular segment of the industry. We have tried to do quite a bit. Certain things we keep on doing in AEPC. We have created a ESG task force of our private people. We have been engaging with most of the ESG players. We have been sensitizing them. We have been telling them what EU regulations entails for them. We have been, like I said, trying to intend to MOU. We have already intended to MOU with NIFT, with Green Business Council. We are about to enter into, MOU with all the big e-commerce players like Amazon and all. So trying our bit in a small way. But the problem is, I believe that there's a larger need that all the elements of this industry need to come together and have a holistic approach. And I think brainstorm regularly, because something out of box needs to be done. Otherwise, we will stay where we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for a number of items that you have listed, from branding, fashion, but mainly we are trying to push what we are producing rather than what the world is demanding. The demand-led approach needs to be put in place, and more cohesive approach within the system. We are too many, maybe too small and too dispersed, which is costing us. I'm already seeing Kansal Saab has 3 pages full of notes. But he has promised to listen to at least one more speaker. Chandrima Chatterjee. She is the Secretary General, Confederation of Indian Textile Industry, called CITI. Floor is yours. We need he has to leave around 11:30. That's what he said. So,
Sure. I was told 7-8 minutes. I like to be there.
Right.
And of course, not much to be said. Firstly, compliments to the ICRIER team. I think it was a very comprehensive study. I understand it was done in 6 months' time, but it covers from farm to retail and absolutely the most topical issues that we all are working on at all the EPCs and the associations. So I think it will be a great start, and we'll all love to pitch in wherever you are working on. Mr. Kansal, Dr. Gulati, the team at ICRIER, and some of the key industry stakeholders I can see here. I really look forward to the conversations today. So I think I put my role as some of the latest data that has been interesting to share, and some thoughts. I'd love to be part of the further discussions on this. So I think I'd like to start with the latest data that has come on the US, because that's one market that is kind of a mini capsule of what's happening around and what has been happening in that market for the last 1 year. We all know a lot of things have happened there. One major trend has been that of China vacating space in the US from July 2024. I was looking at the last 4 months, January to April, and there's a very interesting trend we see. China remains the top supplier, but its growth rate has changed from 11.8% in January this year to minus 11.4% in April. We don't have figures after that. But the interesting thing is, how are the other competitors doing? Bangladesh, in spite of all its challenges, did 46% in January, but is slightly fizzling down at 37.2% in April. Vietnam is going very strong. It's 20 in January, 20% growth to 24.5% growth. And India, which is still the third largest supplier there, going very strong, still above Bangladesh, but slowly losing space to Vietnam now as the competition is growing fierce? And how? From 28.3% growth in January, it's 5.3% growth in April. So that's, I think, a matter of concern as to how we first be in a competition where we are very strong. US is our strongest market today for apparel, but it seems that when the competition goes stronger, we are not being able to keep the steam. But of course, there I think we'll have to look at April. April is not one of our top months. Our peak months are from October to March. April to mid-July is usually the off-peak period, since we are talking of apparel largely there. Now, coming back to your farm to fashion, since Dr. Gulati is here, I think, and I was very happy to see a lot of key issues in cotton that have been addressed. In fact, CITI has been lucky to be part of a major program that is going on, the first of its kind. Agriculture and Ministry of Textile together, we have been doing a special project on cotton for the last 2 years, which was specifically aimed at this, to see what are the key areas led by, initially the idea was given by the then Minister of Textiles, Mr. Piyush Goyal, of looking at the seed, the productivity and key interventions were identified. It has been a very scientifically approached process. We are looking at 2-3 key interventions of how to increase productivity per acreage, because the challenge here is that we have the largest acreage but one of the lowest productivity, and being a growing country, we need to leave some space for the growing need for food grains. So obviously we need to go for higher productivity interventions, and in that, high density plantation has been found to be a very good model. In fact, our teams are there on ground doing that. 2 models, closer spacing and high density plantations, have found a very good uptake in the major cotton belts, and there seems to be a very low hanging fruit there with just 2 years of intervention from the average productivity of around 450-460 kgs per hectare. In some cases, we have been able to, like in Rajasthan, we have been able to achieve something like 1200 kgs per hectare just by having some regulated seed supplies and the right interventions there. So there is hope there, but of course, faster approval of seeds will be a key area where I think a little more speed and effort will be needed. But we are really looking forward to the cotton productivity mission that is going to come shortly. And from maybe this December on, the work on that will start, where that key element has to be put in place, because we keep talking about cotton versus MMF, but of course, cotton is our strength. We see global warming happening. We are hoping that the demand for cotton will stay for various reasons. There is now an international push for natural fibers also. The major destinations are gradually showing a preference for natural fibers, which of course includes cotton, jute, silk, where we are good at, we are key producers and suppliers of, but also some of the new age natural fibers, where Ministry of Textiles is again doing a lot of innovative work, promoting some of the innovations that are happening. But we all know that all these take time. So cotton is where we'll have to keep up our strength, and right from the farm stage. There another area that we as people connected to the farmers feel is augmenting their income so that they are retained in the farm sector. We are seeing a lot, especially because the last 2 years have seen a lot of volatility in price. Keeping them to that vis-a-vis some of the other cash crops, which are very easy to move on to, is another challenge. So there, I think many of these programs also have to look at how their incomes can be augmented. Many a time we find that we go to a region, give them the seeds, the other interventions. They do a great job. Next year we come out of that. There is no subsidy there, and they fall off. So a sustained and upskilled effort at productivity enhancement is constrained by this, where the farmers are not being looped in, they are not being motivated enough. There are a lot of cotton byproducts there where they can move in. A lot of work is going on there. Another important area is carbon sequestration and plugging them into the decarbonization efforts that is going on from the brands onwards. So there are a lot of missing gaps which have to be filled. CITI is trying to do its bit in that. We are trying to train our farmers on regenerative agriculture as also carbon sequestration. Some of these are a little cost-intensive efforts and would need some kind of a project and an upscaling effort to be done for making an impact there, in India being a leader there. That's a very important task that we'll have to take. Another area is, of course, they're linking them to the direct markets. There we see India has another challenge. It is one of the extremely fragmented, low farm size holds. So we are talking of a 2,000 to 3,000 hectare average size in Brazil or US, vis-a-vis in India, where we usually work with 1 hectare farmers. And the challenges and the requirements for that is, of course, unique. You cannot talk of the kind of modernization that is done in the large-scale farms vis-a-vis India. Small farm modernization needs financing, and access to the farmers can, of course, help them. More importantly, reducing that supply chain gap. As of now, between a farmer and the ginner, there may be 2-3 more intermediaries. Of course, that reduces their incomes. And the flexibility, the reach and the price between them and the markets also gets diluted. So that's another space. A lot of work is happening. In fact, the last 2 years have seen a lot of change here. CCI and this project that we are part of has portals today, which is trying to encourage market linkage. This is also very important because we are also trying to address the need of increased traceability of all fibers across the value chain. So, and India is so strong in digital mode. So why not? Why shouldn't we marry our strengths in digitization with the supply chain mapping? So work is going on there right from the seed. A lot of digitization is happening at the Ministry of Agriculture, and plugging in with other stakeholders who are across the value chain is happening right up to the brands. A lot of interest is being shown in that, and organizations like us and others, as also Textile, which has come up with the Kasturi program to enhance the value of cotton, as also enhanced traceability, is working on this. In fact, many of our spinner members today have extremely modern systems. Many of them have included traceability and RFIDs right from the spinning stage to address this issue. And at the cotton bale stage also, this is happening. So in cotton, some of these challenges are being met. However, the fact remains that the markets have become far more volatile, and India today is no longer a major exporter of cotton, though that's not where our vision is, but that's an indicator of where we are going. And on the other hand, MMF, of course, a few of the challenges have already been pointed out. To that, I'll just like to add that that's not just alignment to that, but also how we align. We are, of course, maybe around 20% of the major global basket in that. I had tried to map some of the key, the top 10 products where the global market is and how India is in that. So here, if you see, one of the top products is MMF-based winter wear, which is the second largest globally traded product, where India has a share of 0.1% only. Then there is MMF t-shirts, which is the 6th largest traded product. Again, here, India has only 3.5% share. The 7th largest product is women-based topwear, where India again has 0.03% share. Made-up articles of MMF, India has 2.8% share. Made-ups is supposedly India is one of the stronger points otherwise. Then boys top, the 9th product, where India again has 0.04% share, and woven fabrics of MMF, India has 1.6% share. So in the top 10 products, where more than 5 are MMF or MMF-rich products, India has a dismal performance and share. Another important aspect I thought I'll highlight is when we are looking at the vision, we are talking of 100 billion with 40 billion as garment exports. Are we looking at volumes only, or are we looking at the growth in value terms also? Should we set a target of enhancing our unit value also or not? Because that has been another key reason for stagnation. If you're talking of stagnating India's share around 3.5%, once in a while we have touched 4 also, we have more or less been in 3.5% share. Let's look at how the unit value has progressed. At fiber stage, I have this chart for 10 years, 2013-14 to 23-24. At fiber stage, in 13-14, we were at 1.54% unit value per kg, US dollar per kg of fiber. Today, we are at $0.92 per kg. We have declined. Filaments, same story. Yarn is where we are stable. Yarn actually is one of our strongest segments because the last 10-15 years, we have seen a lot of efforts in investment and modernization. We have the most state-of-the-art machinery today and hence production. Apparel from 4.57% 10 years back, $4.57 per piece. We are at 4.05 per piece. In home textiles, though our exports have increased, our unit value has declined from $3.72 per product to $2.73 per product. So these are figures that show that, especially since India is an economy where wage rates are growing, we are aspiring to put in place fair wages in years to come. It will not be an easy, a low-cost production center. Neither do we aspire to be a low-cost production center. Do we look at value addition, value enhancement? Because in apparel, the cost of labor in the production cost is around 30% more or less. So we are looking at, and hence we need to aspire there. What should be our benchmarks? Of course, some of our competitors like Bangladesh and Vietnam are at similar, but a little higher. Vietnam is a little higher. But let's look at Europe. For Italy, Turkey, or some of the other European countries, you're talking at a unit value realization of $50 or more. So there is a potential there. And of course, one way to grow there is to the technical textiles, where we are focusing a lot. But another is some of the MMF-based products where a lot of diversification can be done. And here again, the constraints that we are facing there in diversification, by not integrating well to the global value chain, by not having a more liberalized import policy for critical inputs, be it fiber, be it yarn, be it any other products. I'll take one more minute. I know you're getting late. Okay, has to be done because some of these products we have tried to tabulate where a lot of good work is happening. A small example is a product called Solucel. It's a product which is used in the MMF segment for it's for hollow conjugate fibers. So it makes the towels more soft. Now, that's a product that's not produced in India. It's completely import dependent. It's a more sustainable version of what's here at the moment, but its import is restricted at the moment because of certain norms that are in place. This is just a very small example of how innovation is happening, diversification attempts are being happening, but we need to make the processes easier for easier exploration of new and innovative products that are coming in the MMF segment and their better integration and adoption in our value chain. Of course, besides that, there is the inverted duty, not just in the GST, but in the BCD also, which makes MMF, and of course, the MMF chain at the down segment cheaper than at the value-added segment. And yarn onwards, there is surely a need for a correction in that. Next is investment. Investment is one area where I think for the last 2 years, the industry is looking at some direction and clarity. Since our last flagship program of Tufts was closed, which was the one that is more mass used and adopted, we have not seen anything. And but there's a great hope in the PM Mitra Parks that is coming, because I think it took time, but it has been visioned well. We are looking at a great hub and spoke model. We are looking at all the right sustainability initiatives in place. I am sure Mr. Kansal will be talking more about that. But if such things come in place, of course, we are not just looking at reducing the logistic cost. We are also looking at the ever evolving and increasing sustainability requirements, which includes carbon footprints, which includes better water, waste, solid waste management. Now, lastly, about the sustainability initiatives, there I hope we are one of the front runners. We have always been a very sustainable production center. The industry, especially the export industry, has been well exposed to the needs of compliance. That was the word we used to use earlier, which has now become a little more what do you say, democratic word, where you call due diligence, and the responsibilities are more shared responsibilities today. But there, the need is to have a little faster understanding of what's going to come, be a more little proactive there, engage with those regulations that are coming, be it UK, EU, and or the other markets, because that's one space we were a little lagging earlier. We had always had a top-down approach of brands telling us what to do rather than an engagement process. After all, we are the largest producers of certain products and, of course, a large consumer market also. And today, with a tiered down approach of due diligence, we are talking of reporting up to tier 4, because India is one of the few countries which is at till the fiber stage at tier 4, with a huge reporting requirement coming in the form of HRDD and CSDDD. This kind of requirements will be needed. Here, the good news is that there is a good awareness, there's a good preparedness. All associations are working. We are working with an Netherlands-based organization to give more awareness, not only awareness on what's going to happen, but more understanding on the exporter's right of how they should negotiate better, as some of these legislations are giving more power to the suppliers and exporters as to how they can optimize the cost of the enhanced due diligence reporting. We are tying up with GRI as ESG reportings are becoming important. And most importantly, whatever the industry does, that should today be better documented, reported, and more transparently shared with the stakeholders, because that's a norm that's coming up in the world. We are partnering with a few data management organizations like Intellicap, ITC Geneva, mainly because we would like to drive this data-driven approach of all the organizations, and especially the MSMEs, because we are seeing a lot of good effort happening for the top 30, 40 listed companies in the textile value chain, but very little happening at the tier 2 and tier 3. But they are going to be a very important stakeholder going forward. So a better understanding and capacity, including access to technology, has to be there. In fact, we are also requesting that this access to technology and capacity building should also be part of the FTA negotiations, as the negotiations nowadays encapsulate these requirements also. So with that, I am very sure that in the sustainability front and the emerging requirements there, India will be one of the leaders. But of course, we have a lot of catching up to do in the capacity building, scaling up, product diversification, and of course, market diversification also, for a very aspirational 100 billion target that we all are trying to do our bits and working towards. Thank you.
Thank you very much for putting sustainability at a high pitch. The natural fibers, low carbon cotton, organic cotton perhaps, but the challenge is getting the right price for it. And that's where we need fashion, we need brand, and perhaps a tie-up with Milan, Italy, to access the high value products rather than the low value products. I think that's a big challenge. Well, we have been all waiting for Rohit Kansalji to give us a comprehensive view, because he's the man today and very passionate about propelling this entire sector. PM Mitra literally is his baby. So, but before you start, you wanted 5 seconds to say something.
Yeah, I think to add to what Chandrima was talking about, the Indian exports not getting aligned to the global trade. I think I have an interesting data point that in the top 15 globally traded apparel products, Vietnam has substantial trade in 14, Bangladesh 11, India is only 5.
Oh,
I thought I'll just share that with you.
thank you, thank you. Please, sir, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashok Gulati and his team of researchers, ladies and gentlemen around the table. Expectations can sometimes be scary, both from what I have to say and both from what government is expected to do. But I do thank Dr. Gulati. We have always known him as the roti man. So his transition from the roti man to the kapda man, in a sense, augurs well that India is going up the value chain. But more seriously, Dr. Gulati, I thank you for your interest in this issue, and I thank Sulakshana and your team for having met me many times, done an extensive stakeholder consultation, come up with this first report, and also promising us that they will be with this sector for at least 2 years. I see many happy auguries in this. We've been exposed to a lot of studies, discussions that government has done, and we've been exposed to a lot of studies and discussions that industry has done. But this good admixture of industry, academy, and government will bring, we hope, a very academic and neutral perspective to the table and guide not just government, but also industry in how we can symbiotically work together. One of the Right Honorable Mr. Trump has been criticized for many things, and rightly so. But one of the things we should thank him for infusing new energy in the textile sector. We all see a lot of energy in this sector. Only yesterday, we were with the Ministry of Commerce discussing this. The NITI Aayog is leading a consultation on global value chains. And here we are today with Dr. Ashok Gulati and his team. I see a familiar group around the table. We have been exposed to each other during many discussions. Whenever we talk of the textile sector, one gets to hear two views around the table. The first view is we are a 5,000-year-old textile heritage economy. We have the complete value chain from end to end. We are a large domestic market. We are the only country which consistently figures among the top 5-7 countries of the world when it comes to either the domestic market or the export market. We have a full value chain. And therefore, we are a very big and important textile country. The other view that one gets to hear is that our textile sector is down the drain. Everything is stagnant. Government has not done anything. We are an absolute failure. We have plenty of lost opportunities. Textiles is a lost sector. No investment is taking place. So depending on who is speaking and what is the occasion on which it is being mentioned, you get to hear these two sets of views, often in the same discussion or roundtables, sometimes in different discussions or roundtables. You go to a government meeting, there will be emphasis on how good we have been, how strong we have been. You go to an industry meeting, you will often hear about how government has failed them and how government is holding back the sector. But I think, as always, the truth is actually a shade of grey. And I think let me begin by giving you some perspective on what the sector is. Speakers before me have spoken about the strength of the sector, and I need not repeat it. We are a $176 billion, 15 lakh crore textile ecosystem, $37 billion, 3 lakh crores of exports, 2.3% of GDP, 10% of merchandise exports, 4.5 crore of employment, second largest after agriculture. And these are no mean figures. I do not think we can be dismissive of them or we can dish them out as being inconsequential. And therefore, any discussion on textiles must necessarily take note of the fact that the situation is neither as grim nor as lamentable as we make out to be. If you look at the global perspective, globally, the per capita fiber consumption is 15 kgs. In India, it is 6 kgs per capita. So there is some ground to cover there. But the global textile outlook of growth is only 2 to 3%. And as Dr. Gulati and his team pointed out, the Indian textile sector has been growing at a CAGR of 7%. What is the global exports outlook? The global exports outlook is only 1 to 1.5%. And our exports have not been growing as well as we want them to grow. But you have to look at it in the perspective of the global growth in exports being only 1%. And therefore, any growth in exports has necessarily got to come from taking away share from other countries. I think there is this very famous U-curve of manufacturing, where the two ends of the curve are design on one hand and marketing on the other hand. So a lot has been spoken about Apple. It would be interesting to note, to compare the market capitalization of NVIDIA, which makes chips, Apple, which makes computers, Foxconn, which makes the Apple components. So you will find that the market cap of the companies which do R&D and the companies which do the marketing and design is many multiples of the market cap of companies which do only manufacturing. And if you translate that to the Indian textile sector, I think we are at the bottom of the U-curve. We are a country which is at the bottom of the U-curve, competing neither on design nor on branding. What are we competing on? We are competing on cost. And therefore, just as the West was edged out of the manufacturing of textiles 5 decades ago, we are continuously feeling the pressure of getting edged out by companies or countries which have lower cost fundamentals than we have, primarily because we are competing on price. And I think this is the perspective we all need to keep in mind when we talk about textiles, and which is why I do agree when Mr. Mithileshwar Thakur here speaks about branding, speaks about designing, so that you move on to the higher elements of this so-called U-curve of manufacturing. But then I must also add a word of caution here. It is much easier said than done, and the costs of building a brand. There are only 25 or 30 large brands in textile throughout the world today, and people sitting on either sides of the table will probably attest to what I am saying. So to reach the levels of those brands will require the kind of efforts in marketing, management, branding, etc., of many multiples. There is one more comment which has often been made, the comment about lost opportunities in China +1, the comment of lost opportunities in Bangladesh +1. Here again, I would say that it's a bit of a mixed bag, and the situation is not really as bad as some of us would like to believe. So I picked up some figures. If you look at the share of China in US imports 10 to 12 years ago, it was 35%. Now this share of China in US imports has come down in the past 10 years from 35% to 14%. So China has lost 21% market share. But what has happened to that 21% market share? Now, out of that 21% market share, China has decreased from 35% to 14%. Bangladesh has increased from 6% to 13%, a growth of 7%. Vietnam has increased from 6% to 13%. But India has also increased from 8% to 13%. So the China +1 is not so much of a is not so much of a lost opportunity or a cause of lament that many of us would like to believe. And the situation is far more even. But I would like to draw your attention to the fact that I've been talking about US imports. I have not been talking about EU imports. So EU imports is a bit of a different story. So you have LDC advantages, we have a 9 to 10% cost disadvantage, something that our FTAs are trying to neutralize. So the point that I'm trying to make is that any discussion on textiles has to look at things in a bit of perspective, and this perspective has to be on multiple fronts. I just gave you 2 or 3 examples. The example of the so-called China plus one story, the example of the so-called growth momentum in global textiles, and the global export. I will give you one more data point. If you look at the past 10 years, and if you look at investments which have happened, 90% of investments have happened in only 7 or 8 countries. 90% of investments in the textile sector have happened in only 8 or 9 countries. And which are those countries? China, India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Turkey, Pakistan. And India is number 2 at that list. So the bulk of the investments in the textile sector globally in the past 10 years have been coming to these 9 countries, out of which India holds the 2nd position. So if you look at it purely from an investment perspective, we've not been doing so badly. And then, of course, if you look at fiber production has doubled, fabric production has doubled, and so many other things have happened. So our domestic market has been galloping. It has been growing at 7 to 8%. But I think the blip is about our exports market. And, it's an arguable point over whether you should prioritize domestic market over export market. And for a variety of reasons, people believe that we should emphasize on exports. And particularly today's discussion is about exports. So we will look at exports. But I think these discussions should give us some perspective about what our textile sector is. Now, what is the vision for our sector? Some comments have been made about where we are and where we want to go. So we are at $176 billion, which is around 250. We are around $176 billion, which is around 15 lakh crores. And we want to go to $350 billion, which is more or less double. And this $350 billion will comprise $250 billion of domestic market or thereabouts, and $100 billion of exports, $40 billion of which will be apparel. So I think the hard part here is looking at the exports bit, and I think Sulakshana, you made that point, that business as usual will lead us to only $31 billion, but we need to escalate to $100 billion overall and $40 billion in apparel exports. So which will require a compounded annual growth rate of anywhere between 15 to 16%. And I think we will require doubling of our fiber capacity from 7 million tons to 15 million tons. We will have to alter our product mix from a 60-40 cotton MMF to probably a 40-60 MMF cotton mix. We will also have to look at different geographies and so on. So the questions that we need to answer or ask ourselves is, what will it take to move us from point A to point B? There has been a lot of talk about disabilities. And yes, we do have disabilities. We do have disabilities in labor. We do have disabilities in power. We do have disabilities in logistics. We do have disabilities in scale. The challenges of the Indian textile sector are too well known for everybody. Some of them are historical. Some of them are policy driven. Some of them are legacy issues. But we do have challenges. But I think, we need to address this question, or we need to answer this question in looking at how do we remedy some of the challenges that we face and what are the steps that we need to do. So if I look at some of these disabilities and some of those challenges and try to map them against what government is trying to do, what policy is trying to do. So we have challenges. One of the issues raised was labor. So we do have challenges in labor. And what are the challenges in labor? The challenges in labor are essentially 3 or 4 kinds. One is cost of labor. The second is availability of labor. And the third are some of the policy constraints governing labor. Some of the challenges in labor have been sought to be offset by what is called ELI, which is being given by the states. So a lot of the states which are dealing in apparel have 5,000 to 6,000 rupees per head per person support being given to some of the apparel manufacturers. Many of the states have signed on to the new labor code, and I am told, I did see Rahul somewhere around the table. We did a study with them. So many of the states have signed up to the new labor codes, which have made the provisions of labor less stringent, more flexible. But yes, that is work in progress. There are disabilities in power, and I will speak at length about Mitra Parks at the end of my talk. But just to give you one data point here, the Mitra Park in Madhya Pradesh is offering power at 4.5 rupees per unit, as against the normal cost of power at 6.5 rupees per unit for industrial states. There are similar support mechanisms for power in practically every Mitra Park. Tamil Nadu, which is traditionally a high-cost state in power, is offering power in Mitra Parks at the rate of 6.5 rupees, 6 rupees 41 paisa per unit. What about capital? Costs of capital are high in India. But, and Dr. Gulati, we were having this discussion, we need to look at real cost of capital. And that is when we will get to understand what are the real costs of capital in India versus some of the competing countries. But what is being done in India in the interim to subsidize these costs? For many years, we ran an ATF scheme, and I will have the figures somewhere about how much we disbursed as part of ATF over the past 10-15 years. But even if I can't fish out the figures immediately, I think many of you are well aware of what we have been able to give in ATFs. Many states are now continuing with ATFs. Also, many states, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Bihar, Odisha, have capital subsidies which end up returning nearly 40 to 50% of the capital cost invested in any apparel unit. So, I will speak about the three flagship schemes of the government of India at the end of it. But I think the larger question that Dr. Gulati, I would like you and your team to investigate and to look at it in a little greater detail. It's almost fashionable to talk about policy constraints, policy issues hampering the growth of the sector. But I think a deeper dive that we need to make is that what is it that we need to do that really moves the needle? In the Ministry of Textiles, we got an HSN code-wise study conducted on the kind of products that we are exporting and the kind of products that we need to export. So I'm not talking about MMF at the moment. We have known disabilities in MMF, whether it is in ability of raw material, whether it is in cost of raw material. Let me only talk about cotton where we have our strength. Even when you look at an HSN-wise analysis of cotton in our export mix, you will find that we have not exhausted the kind of opportunities that cotton has to offer in terms of our export potential, neither in terms of geographies, nor in terms of product mix. Our main export markets are the US and the EU. But we have comprehensive trade agreements with both Australia and Japan, and I do not think we are being able to utilize the full range of options that our comprehensive trade treaties with both these countries are offering us. Similarly, if you look at the product mix, I was very surprised to find that we are doing very well in cotton uppers, ladies uppers, we are doing very badly in cotton lowers. For a similar kind of product, which has more or less similar composition, we are doing very well in one product, we are doing very badly in another product. And I think we need to do a bit of a deep dive, and this would be my call to industry, to look at what are the so-called low-hanging fruit that we can immediately capture insofar as our export potential is concerned. Mr. Mithileshwar Thakur here made a point about accessing the right markets, to accessing the right geographies. I would also like to add the point about the right product mix. There is an almost anecdotal thing about textiles, about India not being able to make what the world needs, and India not being able to sell to countries that need our products. I think this asymmetry in not just the product mix, but also the geographical mix is something which needs to be looked at by industry, and we will have some low-hanging fruit here. The next point that I would like to make is about free trade agreements. There are cost disabilities brought about by free trade agreements. We have just signed one with the UK. We hope to conclude one with the EU, and the EAM has gone on record saying that we look at concluding one with the US very soon, and these will open up far greater vistas. So there are three things that are going to happen. The first thing that is going to happen is that our access to these markets will increase. Do we have the capacities required to meet the demand which will be created by increased access to these markets? Now, if we have the demand which is created by access to these markets, well and good. If we do not have the capacity to satisfy this demand, we will again be left with a lament about us not being able to exploit the China +1 or Bangladesh +1 situation. And what is that is required to invest in this sector. We did a study on the $100 billion export target, and we realized that we would probably need 10 companies the size of your companies, or maybe 7 companies the size of your company, to actually fulfill the demand that will be generated as a result of this 100 billion export target. So what is that is required to fill the reinvestment gap, or the investment gap, is something that we would require industry to take a very close look at. And how do you add the capacities which are required to be added here? What are the reinvestment percentages which are currently occurring in the textile sector? What is the percentage of new players who are coming into this sector? What is the percentage of reinvestment which is being carried out by existing players in this sector? If an adequate amount of demand is being generated, are we seeing a market asymmetry in the demand versus supply situation, is something that we need to look at from all elements of the value chain. There have been some comments made about the fragmented nature of the value chain. Well, this is not unique to the textile sector alone, and some kind of creative tension does exist between every element of the textile, of every value chain. It is probably pronounced, it is probably more pronounced in the textile sector, and we need to look at what are the elements that we need to take care of. Industry has often raised issues of high cost of raw material, particularly in MMF, lack of availability of raw material, cost of cotton which is available, lack of processing capacities, and that is something that we need to look at. Chandrima made a few comments about sustainability, and I do think I agree with her. On sustainability, the larger companies are doing very well. They are as sustainable as the best in the world. But considering the fact that we are 80% comprised of MSMEs, that is where the real challenge lies. In fact, I'm very happy to report, and I've said this in multiple forums, a lot of Indian clusters are leading the way in sustainability. Tirupur is fairly sustainable. Panipat is an example in sustainability by itself. But overall, as a country, I think we need to tackle the twin challenges of finance, and we need to tackle the challenges of technology to be more sustainable. I was looking at an international study on the 5 mega trends which are going to drive the textile sector in the next 4 decades, and digitization, AI, smart factories, were all part of the list. But in every global trend list that you see, sustainability is up top there. Sustainability is not just something that you need to do. At one point, it was something that you needed to do. Today, it has become something without which not. So it is no longer a matter of choice. It is something that we need to do, we ought to do, and we must do. And I spoke about at the beginning of my talk about India's positioning at the bottom of the value chain in terms of competition merely on price. Sustainability is one element that we can pick up, we can draw upon to draw the attention of the world buyers community about how we are being sustainable. On branding, for the past 2 years, we have been trying to bring together elements of the value chain in the shape of Bharat And Bharat is an attempt to brand Textiles India, to show to the world how we can be global producers, producers at scale, sustainable producers, with capacities across the value chain, right from raw materials up to finished products. And more importantly, how India can be a beacon of certainty in a world which is marked by fragmented value chains, weaponization of value chains, how we can be stable partners in an uncertain world. And this is the message that we want to carry for all future editions also, to impress upon the world how the resilience of value chains in India, how the strengths of value chain in India, how strengths across the value chain in India will make India and Indian companies sustainable, reliable partners across different elements of the value chain. I may have to leave after I finish my talk, but I'm sure the discussion will go on, and there will be discussions on policy. Many of you will have points to make about policy. So I want to answer some of the issues that many of you have will raise. Availability of raw materials is one important issue. We are seized of the matter. There are sharply divergent views on the utility of or otherwise of QCOs, and this is one element on which the value chain is sharply divided. And Dr. Gulati, I would request you to look at this issue in a little more detail, how to balance the competing interests of protecting the domestic industry, encouraging reinvestment in capital-intensive industries, but also making sure that the downstream industries have access to high quality, competitive cost, adequate quantity raw materials, so that the overall competitiveness of the downstream industry does not get impacted. The other issue which has been raised again and again is about the apparel sector. So we do firmly believe that the apparel sector is the engine of growth, and the AEPC made a point about generation of jobs in the apparel sector. Spot on that one. We do believe that 50 crore, which is around $7-8 million of investment in the apparel sector, has the potential to generate at least 1,000 jobs, or anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 jobs. This is also the engine which will propel the entire textile sector through a cascading impact, through a ripple down impact. And often when textile sector talks about cost disadvantages, it misses out the enormous support which is being given by a lot of states across the country. And I did make a mention of Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Jharkhand, Odisha, Gujarat, each of whose textile policies are competing with each other to offer greater and greater support to apparel makers. There was one study which was brought to my attention, which pointed out that almost 50 to 60% of the capital invested in the apparel sector comes back to the investor over a period of 5 to 6 years through various support mechanisms by the state. I do understand that industry has some concerns about the speed of disbursement of incentives and the time frame of disbursement of incentives. The third issue which has been brought to our attention is labor. And I did mention to you about the new labor codes and how a lot of states are signing on to progressive initiatives in labor. And the three sub-components of labor which have been often mentioned are overtime charges, quarterly overtime hours, number of hours for which labor can work. And a lot of states are taking steps on that. On labor, there is a Government of India scheme which is called Employment Linked Incentive, which was announced in last year's budget. So that scheme is also going to be approved by the cabinet very shortly, which will add another layer of support to all sectors across the industry, but more so to the textile sector, more so to the apparel sector. Another issue which has been not been mentioned so much, but is an issue of great concern and great importance is, and your company has been making a mention of this. I would like to compliment you for that. Has not just been availability of labor, but also safe housing for labor. And safe housing for labor is not just an essential component of the Mitra parks that we are designing, but also the union budget lent its support and approval to safe housing, worker housing, and that is also going to come up shortly. We have spoken about PM Mitra parks. There is now thinking on PM Mitra regions, where the parks, each park is surrounded by a set of spokes which can act as apparel hubs to act as PM Mitra regions. Again, in the union cabinet, in the union budget, 100 parks were approved. The scheme is being piloted by BPIT. A lot of these parks are going to be apparel parks, and even where there are mixed parks, a lot of spaces are going to get reserved for apparel particularly, so that these can act as spokes to PM Mitra parks, veritably making them PM Mitra regions. There have been comments about labor productivity, and Mr. Mithileshwar Thakur specifically made mention to complicated products that we find difficult to mention. We have a Samarth scheme, but we are also thinking of upgrading the Samarth scheme to provide higher quality training in complicated products also, so that industry can take advantage of these schemes. So I do think that many of the problems, challenges which industry has brought to attention are being handled through one policy initiative or the other. And I have made an attempt to map the challenges which have been projected by industry versus the kind of policy initiatives which have been brought about by the government. PLI 1 is trying to address the challenges of technical textiles in particular. And while I do agree that apparel makers are finding some difficulty, and the ministry is thinking of a PLI 2 scheme, but we are conscious of the fact that it will either be a PLI 2 scheme. If it is not a PLI 2 scheme, we will find of an alternative scheme where we can drive apparel as the engine of textile growth and production. But having said so, I would also like to draw the attention of this house, which has many representatives of industry. Industry needs to take a good hard look at what do we need to do to build capacities. We cannot build a sector on the strength of ATAFs alone. And please pardon if my words sound a little tough in this context. I would most respectfully urge everybody around the table to look at a sector which grows on the strength of global demand, on the strength of tremendous geopolitical opportunities which are being created, and to look at capacity creation as an exogenous variable being driven by the tremendous opportunities which are being thrown up around the world. The outlook has never been brighter for this sector. Whether you look at the globally changing situation, whether you look at the demand which is being created, whether you look at India's own domestic market and projections for growth, we are already a lower middle income country. We have plans to become a high-income economy by 2047, with cascading impacts on consumption at every level. And I would like to urge industry to look at capacity creation. Take that leap of faith, which will help build the textile ecosystem that we are looking at. I would like to conclude by spending some time on PM Mitra Parks. What is the concept? What are we trying to do? Why is it so important? And what are the plans for the future? Why did we think about PM Mitra Parks? PM Mitra Parks attempt to answer many of the queries which industry has and many of the challenges which were posed by industry. And what were those challenges and problems? The problem of a fragmented value chain. You grow cotton in Maharashtra, spin it in Tamil Nadu, weave it in Bhilwara or Surat, process it in Pali, garment it in Bangalore or Noida, and then sell it through one of the ports. PM Mitra attempts to bring together all elements of the value chain in one place. What is the second problem that industry spoke about? The second problem that industry spoke about was scale. A typical garment manufacturing unit in Vietnam, China, Bangladesh has at least 1,000 machines. We have exporters who have 250 machines. How do you address this problem of scale? Our parks so far are 100 acres in size. PM Mitra addresses this problem of scale by ensuring that the minimum size of a park which can be considered for PM Mitra is 1,000 acres. And I'm very happy to inform you that Madhya Pradesh, of its own violation, it's not violation, it's violation. So of its own violation, has increased the size of the PM Mitra Park from 1,000 acres to 2,000 acres. And a lot of other states are either doubling the size of the parks or increasing the size of the parks by 150%. So it addresses the problem of scale. What is the third problem that we are addressing? The third problem that we are addressing is to take care of some of the quote unquote disabilities that industry likes to talk about. What are the disabilities that industry likes to talk about? Power. Each PM Mitra Park will have differential rates of power, which are at least a couple of multiples lower than the cost which is being charged to industries in the same state. Madhya Pradesh charges 6.5 rupees for power supply to industrial units across Madhya Pradesh, but in Mitra Parks, it will charge only 4.5 states. Many other states have promised that they will have policy certainty in rates of power and water, which are the two critical components of textiles anywhere in the country. So you not just have policy certainty, you also have lower rates. What is the third problem which is sought to be solved? The third problem which is sought to be solved is labor. Whenever Mr. Harish Ahuja meets me, he always tells me that the challenge in the apparel sector is getting more and more people. How are we solving this problem? We are trying to get 1 lakh workers in PM Mitra Park, Tamil Nadu. And we are trying to build dormitory accommodation for 10,000 people, 10,000 workers in PM Mitra Park. So 10% of your labor will have accommodation inside the park so that your labor problems can be taken care of. And we can increase the size of the accommodation depending on demand. We can have 20,000 beds, we can have 30,000 beds, provided there is adequate demand. What is the fourth problem that you are trying to solve? The fourth problem is again the disability that people talk about, the cost of capital or the cost of land. What are we doing in PM Mitra Parks? The land in PM Mitra Parks is entirely free of cost. Land is free of cost. Government is giving, in addition to free land, 500 crores of infrastructural support for building the PM Mitra Park. Free land plus 500 crores of infrastructural support translates into significantly lower rates for the developed plots which are being given to investors inside the PM Mitra Park. What is the next disability that we are trying to solve? The next disability that we are trying to solve is the problem of clearances. All clearances in PM Mitra Park are pre-obtained. So any one of you will not have to go and seek environmental clearance by yourself. My PM Mitra parks have already got environmental clearance. So nobody has to obtain environmental clearance besides other municipal clearances. What is the next thing? We are giving plug and play infrastructure. Plug and play is a very abused word, but what does plug and play infrastructure mean? Plug and play infrastructure can mean two things. One, I give you a developed plot which has power, which has water, which has STP, which has ETP, which has CETP, which has ZLD, which has IoT, which has CCTNS available to your park gate, including all the SCADA controls. But I can also give you a higher version of plug and play infrastructure, which means I can give you developed sheds in case you want those sheds. If you want me to develop sheds and give you sheds so that you can just install your machineries and start working, I am happy to give you that as well. But if you only want me to give you developed land so that you can build your own shed, bring your own machineries and start working, I will give you those as well. So I can give you either of the two things. And finally, what am I going to give you? I am going to give you a sustainable park. I am going to give you open access. Every park will at least have 5 megawatt solar plants in situ. In situ means inside the PM Mitra park on location. And I will give you permission to access green power through open access if you need. So that when you go to your buyers, you go to your brands, you can speak to them about how sustainable these PM Mitra parks are. So PM Mitra is truly a revolutionary concept, and it is a concept which is trying to address many of these disabilities. And what is the final icing on the cake? The final icing on the cake is that over and above the incentives that you may get from the government of the state, from any other side, I will give to the investors in PM Mitra Park 300 crores of incentives over and above any other incentives that you may have got. These incentives will be given to people who are the first to set up their units in the park. Of course, there will be boundaries. How much incentive can be given in 1 year, how much incentive can be given to one particular company, but the overall kitty of incentives I have is 300 crores of incentives per park. Now, what are we doing to make these parks a reality? I think Chandrima is probably not aware of what we are doing fully, so she probably mentioned about them taking time, which is not correct at all. In Madhya Pradesh and in Tamil Nadu, in both these states, we have approved projects for 2,000 crores. So these parks are now open for investment. Any investor can go and buy land in the park and start the process of development, so that by the time your land is ready, your machineries come, your parks developed land will also be made available to you with plug and play facilities. In Telangana, the park is already functional. So if you want to go and set up your unit today, you can go and set up your unit today, build your plant, order machinery, start producing. 3 large companies, Young One, Keytex, and Ganesha Ecosystems have already completed their sheds in the park. In Maharashtra, the Honorable Prime Minister laid the foundation stone of the parks. The road construction work is already ongoing in the parks. The land is available for sale today if you want to go and buy land. So in 4 out of the 7 parks, investors can go apply for land. By September, land will be allotted to you, and by 2027 September, you will be able to come up with your production, maybe even faster if you like. In Gujarat, we are going through some procedures. So I expect that by the end of August, we will open that park to investments also. So by the end of August, or at best by September, you will have 5 out of the 7 PM Mitra parks ready to invite investors for making their investments in the park. And we plan to invite the Honorable Prime Minister for groundbreaking ceremony in Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Gujarat in September, so as to instill further greater confidence in what we are doing. So I would strongly urge you that these parks are a leap of faith, and this leap of faith of the government has to be complemented by energy from all of you here. And we do hope that with your support, we will be able to make them a success. And for those of you who would like to take areas around these PM Mitra parks, we are equally happy for you to consider spokes around the PM Mitra parks and see PM Mitra parks as feeding zone of raw material fabric for the apparel manufacturers around the spokes. So there are a lot of things to say. I have already overshot myself by almost 20 minutes. But what I do want to say, and I do see many stakeholders, partners around the table. I see Invest India, with whom we are entering into a major investment promotion exercise. Invest India tells me that there are at least 5 major investors, 3 of whom are from Taiwan, who are extremely upbeat about investment opportunities in India and investment opportunities in PM Mitra parks. I see Fed around the table, and we have done a lot of studies with Fed about many of the perceived and actual disabilities that we face. And of course, with CITI on my right and AEPC on my left, we are engaged in a continuous process of dialogue. I began my comments by saying that the truth everywhere is a shade of gray. I would like to conclude my comments by saying that the truth everywhere is indeed a shade of gray. Any discussion on the textile sector does not have to become a maximalist position between industry having to hold all the burden or government having to hold all the burden. I do think that we are a happy family in which all the elders of the family have to share equal responsibility, and the two main responsibility bearers are government and industry. Government is extremely open to addressing your concerns through policy and also through direct support. But I would also like to see, if I may re-invoke John F. Kennedy after many years, industry will also have to think not only about what the country has to do for them, but also about once in a while what they need to do for their country. And I think it is in this spirit that we have to approach the textile sector. But I do want to say that we are extremely open to not just listening to you, but taking action on any issues that you may like to bring to our notice. And I would do like to conclude by complimenting and thanking Dr. Ashok Gulati, Sulakshana, Ria, and all the elements and all the members of their team, but also requesting you to use the 2 years that you have so kindly devoted to us to look at some of these issues in greater detail, and many of the points which I have raised and many of the points which are going to be raised during the rest of the roundtable, so that we are genuinely and meaningfully able to make the needle forward. I profusely thank all of you for having invited me here, and I do hope that this roundtable that we have had is going to translate into meaningful outcomes, so that when we do meet after 2 years at the conclusion of this exercise, we are able to proudly say how far we have been able to move the needle insofar as the textile sector is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rohit ji. This has been a treat, and you have been very generous with your time. I know I counted only 3 pages. Actually, it is 6 pages. Still, there are points on the table. He has already postponed one of the meetings that he had in the ministry. just for us and given very good suggestions, and where the glass is already half full for domestic market, we are doing pretty fine from $175 billion. If we are going to take it to $350 billion, this is the resilience of the system that Indian market can provide. Good thing is, when I devoted and committed myself to roti, there is a limit of the plate, how many rotis you can eat, but there is no limit of the kapra that you want to wear. You can go from 2 to 20. And that's where the demand is unlimited. As the incomes will rise, the demand for clothing will definitely go up. But we have to move from the low value to a high value, high priced, and for that, number of things need to be put in place. You have uplifted our spirits about PM Mitra, and it looks that there is going to be realization of the targets that you are putting on the table. So that's very comforting, because frankly, I was very skeptical how we will do it, because it's all those lands are still vacant, nothing is there. So I'm sure very soon factories will start coming. We are ready to walk with you. Of course, the heavy lifting has to be done by the ministry and the policy environment by you. We are like neutral players in between. Whatever little analysis, and we are looking from the rooftop and trying to analyze not only actions at home, but also in the neighboring countries and other countries where the global things are moving. So we will be ready to work with you or with the industry or with other stakeholders in the interest of the country as a whole, not for one company or for one policy. But sometimes we are critical, sometimes we are extremely appreciative. The fact is, we are committed to the cause of the country and betterment of this country. That's the underlying with all this. I thank you, all of you. We will get back because there is a tea waiting also, and there is a biopressure building up to old people. So we will break for 15-20 minutes and get back here, and then look, listen to the.
After I leave, you're free to criticize me as much as I like.
I like the compliment side. You are shown the brighter days ahead.
But we need 10 companies like you to.
Let's see when I Ministry of Textiles will be very full and have a bright future.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Yeah, certainly. Come, Chandrima. Come. Oh.
Yeah.
The star. Put that better. This is I find
Thank you.
Then you really give up to having fun.
Sales team. So they dominate the landscape.
I'll have a.
I think.
Yeah, no, don't worry, I'll remember.
ठीक है ना? ये चलते हैं बात और गिरने के अपनी the capacity development slash station building covered from 79757.
Hello. Can I request all those who are outside to come in? Yeah. The way we have, thank you very much for coming back. And we had a very good session in the morning, especially the government view and what is the vision of the government. And that was the prime thing to look at, because ultimately policies are made by the government. But the country doesn't move only by the government. The country moves by all those stakeholders in the game who put their money on the table, take all the risk, and try to tap whatever the markets can offer them. It's a business model. So what the way we have planned is that there will be short, there are no presentations, formal, but observations, comments, and especially where the shoe is pinching to the exporters, because this particular roundtable, the focus is, yes, we are doing good on the domestic market. Yes, maybe more investments are coming, but why our share for 25 years has remained at 3%? That is the issue we want to tackle. And that has to be done by the exporters. The largest exporter in the country, as per our study, is Shahi Exports. And those who are not aware, only 1 minute I'll take. The lady who founded this, Sarla Ahuja ji, what I read and what my team has been reading, she started off with just 15 women doing 200 pieces a day in 1974. And today they are the largest exporter, more than 1 lakh employees, more than 50 factories or so. So it's a remarkable story that we can scale up, but it took 50 years to scale up to that level. And the world is not going to wait for us for 50 years. So the issue is how an organic evolution of 50 years can be compressed into 5, 7, 10 years. Can we create 10 more Shahi type scales in the next 8 to 10 years? That is where the policy is important. That's where also the international agencies. I see a representative of ADB, and I'm told that ADB is part of the funding for the next 7 years or so in many of these things. So I would request you also to pitch in with your comments. But let me hand over the floor to Giriji, 10 minutes or so, about what the issues are and how to get to a higher share in the global market. You are the expert.
Thank you so much, sir. In fact, when you talk in the beginning, you spoke about your student days and what was the slogan that time it was happening. We still feel that we are students, but the difference is the students at your time or now also, they are giving examinations once in quarter, 6 monthly or yearly. But here as exporters, we are giving examinations every day. Sometimes we are succeeding, sometimes we are failing. So this is what is happening. And when, well, it takes 50 years or even more than that. But then, every day it is a learning. And out of that learning, we are just, going ahead. The topic which is there to do farm to foreign. When we think about this, it's a very vast topic, And Sulakshana told me that, I have to speak about, the practitioner's perspective, So I am going to confine myself, to that, the practitioner's perspective. So it is like, the farm to foreign, I feel we are midstream actors. We are in between. We are neither this end or that end, And then when you are in the middle, from everywhere you get pushed and squeezed. So this is what normally happens as far as we are concerned. We are an integrated entity. It means, that we are having, all the operations, right, from, fabric making and even from cotton sourcing and all that, till our final product and exports. This is what we are doing. Now, many questions are asked, while doing that thing, when we are particularly sourcing cotton, whether the cotton is an organic cotton, whether this thing, what is the quality, what is the traceability, which Chandrima also, talked about. But here the one question, so whenever I think about the cotton, that comes to my mind is many times our government resorts to, exports. They give the permission to export cotton. When we have so much demand, domestically or here, for the exporters, why one has to keep on exporting cotton? Now, the impact of the cotton exports is like this. When cotton is exported, the prices go up. And then ultimately the competitiveness of the exporters, it becomes a volatile kind of a thing. And it becomes a problem for us so that, cotton exports, whether, it has to be done, because when we in fact, they import cotton. So why, when we are importing cotton, why export cotton? And this is one of the things, which is there. Now, what the Shahi's model as such, when I'm talking about, earlier we were concentrating in urban areas, setting up our factories and all that, but subsequently we realized the availability of labor is an issue. And for that, we took a conscious decision to go to tier 2 and tier 3 factory and tier cities. The advantage is that, the labor is available there. And you don't have to provide, transportation, or you don't have to provide for the accommodation or the hostels. And you get the educated kind of a labor force, from there. They don't want to migrate, particularly women workers. So it becomes a win-win situation for them as well as for the us. Of course, there are certain advantages, like the infrastructure is not good, so the cost goes up, transportation cost goes up, our training cost here, because in urban areas you will find trained workers, but there we have to start. Attrition is good, attrition is not that much. So the migration part is also taken care. You don't have to, the hostels and all that, Plus, the workers also, the buyers, they're also very particular about this thing. When we are doing all these things, what is that, you are doing this thing? When they talk about the cotton as such, they also raise these questions about the traceability, workers' well-being, whether you are, when buyers are coming and talking to us, the first line is that, you are already compliant. There is nothing that, what is that extra that you are doing? What is your investment in renewable energy? What is your investment in R&D? What are the various things, you are doing extra? What is that, of course, price is not the talking point now. Price is, of course, it is there. Besides price, they are talking about what is extra that you are giving us. And of course, we have to do something extra, and we tell them, besides the price, competitive price, we also offer you the designing services. Shahi has got more than 100 designers with us. So that becomes also a unique point for the buyers to come to us, to work with us, and they also spend less on, upon having the designers, in their offices as such. The challenges that we face, this also I should talk about what challenges we are facing. One is, the movement of the from those locations to the ports. Sometimes the containers are available, sometimes containers are not available. The cost of the cost also in the transportation cost also goes up. So this becomes, again, the factors which affect our this thing. And then we have also noticed, my colleague, Mr. Goel and I, we were struggling I'll just give an example. It was the election days those time, and our truck was, stopped by somewhere in between Bangalore and Chennai, and they were not releasing the truck, thinking that it must be having something cash. It was this is sealed kind of thing. And 5 days they kept the truck. We missed the vessels. We kept on pleading. He kept on talking to them. But there was no thing. When we talk that the export is the priority, our FTP, foreign trade policy, says that no matter what happens, that export should not get stopped. But here, that Tahsildar, he kept on, holding our truck. He was not opening. We told him that open the truck and see that whether there is any contraband or any cash or anything of the sort. So these is the mindset, which is also very, very important. So these are some of the challenges that we go to the customs offices. And sometimes what happens is that they raise the alert. We have taken the licenses from the DGFT, and the licenses are under the process. Or we have exported, we have submitted our documents to the DGFT for redemptions. But the customs says you are not submitted the EODCs on time. So they raise the alert, and raising the alert means what happens that you everywhere your import export is stopped. And then again, we have to keep on talking to the Commissioner of Customs and then say that this is, and this happens despite the fact that we are 5-star trading house status holder. We are also the AEO 3. So sometimes it happens like this, all these tags become cosmetic. Does it carry any real meaning or not? So whatever the tags that you are giving, whatever the decorations that you are giving to us, I think it must have some sort of acceptability and this thing. Again, the question comes the mindset. Recently, there was a big kind of annual business meet of CII, and everybody talked about the mindset. The mindset has to be changed right from the beginning to the down level. Then only I think there we can get some sort of an impetus as when we are exporting this. We feel we are like trade warriors everywhere. I mean you forget everything. You know that this is the target. This is my delivery date. You have to, complete that delivery date. And like a warrior, you have to keep on fighting at every stage. And one doesn't know where the missile is going to come. And all departments are waiting just to shoot. Sometimes, I'm not exaggerating. Your labor department is there. Your factory department is there. Your environment department is there. Your DGFT is there, your customs is there, your income tax is there, Ministry of Corporate Affairs is there. Everywhere something or the other, they are this. Now, where is the hand holding? Where is the support? Everybody thinks that, putting the stumbling blocks as such, So these kind of thing that the export is the priority, national priority. If this does not go into the minds of the people, I think we will keep on struggling and we will keep on, fighting battle like warriors. So this is one thing. Then the questions, I have, the observers after listening to this thing, I also have many questions. I don't have the answers. Now, say for example, worldwide, it is 38% cotton and 62% your man-made fiber. Here in India also we say that the 30% is this man-made fiber.
2872.
2872. Yeah. Now the PLI which is there, I'm just talking about the PLI. PLI was designed for the man-made fibers as such with certain categories. I think it's not taken off. Of course, I'm not, criticizing the scheme as such, but the objective of the scheme was that you should have some sort of this thing, keep in mind that the objective is that you must invest certain amount and you must generate employment. The turnover follows. If these two things are there, so that is how the policy has to be designed like that. And then the condition that you have to have minimum turnover like this. So, and in man-made fiber, we are not that strong. This thing, told the government also, through AEPC, so that, let it be fiber neutral, whatever they think, or rely certain conditions. But this is, of course, again, a matter where maybe that, with your interventions, it could be enough. We also talk about the scale. Now, so far, we were taught right from the beginning, since our childhood also, the small is beautiful. We reserve this textile sector or the apparel sector, particularly for the small scale industry. And this is what we are carrying, that legacy of the small, this thing. So I think, we have to change that thing, subsequently. But here, again, whenever we want to give certain benefits, certain advantages, so again, we are discriminated. Big is not bad. Big is also, which is required. See, the international agencies, now we talked about 25 big brands which are there. They are not small. You could be this, that the mindset again has to be changed, that we want to be big. We want to scale up. We want to have the large scale economies available to our company. Then only we will be in a position to grow. The cost advantage, I mean, we have to be competitive. And the question comes about the wages. The wages to FOB or the sales, the percentage is about 30%. Unlike in other industries, it will be a 5%, 6% or 10% like that. So the margins are very, very small, and you are not in a position to compete internationally because, so this is also another factor. Of course, what Dr. Gulati also suggested in his article, which appeared yesterday in Indian Express, he also suggested that Mandreka funds, and he also talked about Mandreka funds. So why not, divert this thing? And the industry is a seasonal industry. We basically cater to fall and cater to spring and summer. And fall and winter, we are neglecting this thing, because we don't have the capacity, we don't have the capability of catering to this. So hardly we work, for 5-6 months, and the 5-6 months we don't have those many orders as such. So this anomaly has got to be corrected. Now, how to correct it? Again, there are various ways of correcting it. You allow free import of the material which is required. Say for the winter garments. Of course, this also was suggested by us. We are established exporters. We have certain performance. Now, rather than going through the same process of applying to the licenses, getting the licenses, and going through the rigmarole of having completion of the licenses, submitting redemptions, rather than that, I give me some entitlement, say 5%, 10% of my exports. I am entitled to import whatever I want to import. And you put the condition that I must export the product with certain value addition. I am prepared to do it. Give both the options. Those who want to go through the normal course, let them go. But if I want to go through this process of give me certain things, I can avail that thing. I will fulfill my export obligations. So this is what needs to be done. Secondly, the skilling is also very, very important. And everybody talks about skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and every day the things are getting changed a lot. And for that, we are talking about AI, we are talking about IoT, we are talking about machine learning, all those things. For that, we really need to, of course, Ministry of Textiles also has summer scheme. Also, DDU GKY under Ministry of Rural Development, there's also another scheme. But see the difference between these two. And now I run about 100 training centers throughout India, and we have trained 80,000 girls. From villages, tribal villages, and small villages, from LW districts. We have mobilized them, trained them in our training centers, and given them the employment. But what happens nowadays, when we go there in the district, somebody also goes, under DDU GKY, and I also go over there. So the DDU GKY is a residential program, and they give you all the boarding, lodging, transport, everything. Whereas under summer scheme, it is not residential. So they have to come, and the allocation is also very less. So when you have to, this thing, really, I think, it should be on par with DDU GKY. Whatever the scheme that you are having for skilling, I think that will also, give lot of, advantages as such and as far as the skilling is concerned. So our policies have to be again, fast and stable and also the focus oriented towards, growth. So this is what we need to, India wants to be a sourcing destination, not only sourcing destination, but a value added sourcing destination. For that, we again, have to work constantly towards that. FTA, of course, is there. PLI, I talked about the, in fact, India, we had a past glory, 17th, 18th century. I mean, our textiles was 25% of the world textile trade. We had that kind of a glory. Now we are also looking at it with these various initiatives, various kinds of, the involvement of the people, industry, government, and the institutions like this. So it is very essential that, we this, again, try to achieve that kind of this thing. And I really thank you so much, for giving the opportunity. And we'll keep on 2 years, you will be there with us. Also, we'll be keeping on raising, various issues, and then maybe that you can take it forward and something good will come in from the industry.
Thank you. So kind. A lot of issues you have raised. May I request anybody else coming after this to prioritize? If you give a laundry list of 20 things, and that means we haven't done our work in terms of prioritizing where the action has to be. And there are 100 problems in India, but India is still moving. If we look at the ease of doing business, basically that you have reflected, nobody should be doing business. But we are doing it, and we are a business nation. So we find ways, yes, there are delays, there are costs, all those things happen, but India is not a failed story. It is moving. But it can move faster. That's the issue. And therefore, top three points that you would like to say. May I request, your export volumes are about $1 billion today? Yeah. And second biggest is in the industry, Gokuldas, or you, Pearl, or so maybe, is there anybody from Gokuldas? No, okay. Yeah. Floor is yours.
So yeah, thank you first of all, Dr. Gulati. Like, no, as I saw your article,
Speak in the. Mhm.
after reading that article, definitely I felt that I must come
Mhm.
and attend this session.
Thank you.
So that's the kind of detail, and you are hitting the nail on very precisely in certain topics. Of
Mhm.
course, after that we heard Rohit ji said all the problems are more or less solved for the next 2 years, 3 years once the PM Mitra would be coming in. So yes, I represent Pearl. Pearl Global is a company which is manufacturing in India and also 5 other countries that we are working out of. Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, and Guatemala. These are all the locations where we have our own factories. And
We went outside
yeah,
to look for opportunities and how to tap those opportunities, and quite a bit of investment outside. That's very interesting. And why not 5 times more in India? That's the issue.
Quite a few of them have gone outside.
They also.
They are in Bangladesh, or even in Gokuldas for that matter.
Yeah, go ahead.
so I come from the other side of the industry more. I've spent more time in sourcing. I was with Gap for almost 21 years and I was sourcing for them globally. And that gave me a good perspective about how the industry is running across the globe. And, the industry has been controlled. These apparel, I'm speaking about apparel specifically now, not textiles, not home goods, nothing. So in apparel, it has been the global players who control this market. Initially, it used to be Jews because New York was producing garments in 1920. All the, Manhattan, if you go to, all the tall buildings that you will see between 35th Street to 45th Street is most of them were all garment factories. And even the big fire incident that happened in 1920 when people jumped out from the 10th floor or 11th floor. And that set the policies of, fire department in US at that point of time. And that same thing happened in Bangladesh in 2014-15. When Hamim got a fire and people were jumping out on the 10th floor. So that's the kind of, industry has been migrating from one country to the other because of the labor cost. And as you are doing this document, so very interesting read, but I always would like to request you to go that outside in approach. Let me see where the success has been. So after US, the goods had migrated to the USSR, those kind of Russian bloc, they were manufacturing a lot of apparels. Then finally, in the 2000s, it came into Asia, where China really exploded. And of course, they went into WTO and GATT thing and all those things happened. And then finally, China was ruling it. So at $180 billion of garment exports, India never went beyond 17, I think 16.5 to 17 was the highest that we have done. And they were doing 180. So as a company, as a business, we look after EBITDA. Well, I'm a professional. I'm not an owner of the company. So naturally, what matters is the EBITDA, PAT, ROCE, asset turns. Of course, in India, most of the export houses that had come up are the promoters who made a lot of assets. I'm talking very specifically out here and very frankly. So yes, in this apparel sector, people have made a lot of assets because most of this industry happened in places like NCR, Tirupur and all. So they made beautiful assets. Most of it now gives more value if you give it to IT and rather than running a garment factory. So yes, what Shahi has done is definitely going into the tier 2, tier 3 cities where the workforce is. Today, the biggest problem in South also we are facing is workforce. We don't have the workforce, like, definitely the hostel facilities and all those things are required. And there comes the, the international brands and retailers. When they look into it, that becomes very strict in terms of what should be the hostel facility. So it's not easy to make a hostel facility. Shahi has struggled quite a lot. In fact, I was on the other side of the chair at that point of time, and from Gap, like we had a huge nightmare in India when these hostels were being picked up, and even KPR, like was one of our biggest, also had a huge issue in terms of their hostels. So this is a big one for the Western markets. They don't understand that we are elevating the lifestyle, but in fact, they feel that we are putting them in prison. That's the kind of articles that come out on the hostels. So yes, India needs a lot of employment. We are average age about below 30 at this point of time, and first generation workforce after the fields is, I think, the garment manufacturing, which can happen because the training needs about 30 to 40 days. They can train fully. He's the largest trainer of manpower in the world, I would say, in this industry. So that with that thing happening, I think we should be investing into this industry much, much more. And another study that I would request all of you to look into is that for each of these successful countries, how much is the garment export versus the textile export, the yarn export, and the cotton export? So that itself will tell you like which is the pulling factor, which will pull all the industry up. It's government, definitely. So the 2-3 things has to be understood by the government. When I listen to the government officials, most of the time I feel that it's everything. So handloom has to be promoted, textile has to be promoted, cotton has to be promoted. So yeah, but then what's the approach? That strategy, if we can make as a country, and you are doing the academic research on it, like if that can be focused upon, I think that would be a great start. Government, you have to give a lot of employment to this country. And I was interacting with one of the ACS in one of the states. And he said, like, if I employ one person, like my cost is about, even if I'm paying, let's say, a minimum wage of 14,000, but that employee is costing me 40,000 rupees because, all the other facility that you have to give, you get an office, chair, cooler, and then, of course, the EFPSI, all these things. So in place of that, if you're giving 4,000, 5,000 kind of, subsidy for this industry where you're generating the first gen employment, is much, much more attractive. And if that idea can be really absorbed, and of course, you are talking about other funds which is available to the government, if that can be channelized. And we are actually, what do you call it, we're teaching a person how to fish and not even feeding them fish into their mouth. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that India should look into. Labor policies we discussed, yes. We are running factory in other countries, like more successful countries like in Bangladesh and Vietnam. One is how much minimum wage that we are paying. And plus, if I go fully compliant as per the rules of Indian government, all the rules, and because international clients have to be 100% compliant. I cannot be 99% compliant. Otherwise, I'll not get the business of the best of the brands. To do that, it's almost 1.8 times or double we are paying. So maybe the minimum wage is this much, but all the other facility that we're giving, PA, PSI, leave encashment, provident fund, gratuity, medical insurance, all these things is if I have to follow the rule, then I have to almost pay the double. Now, what is the comparison between Vietnam, Bangladesh, Cambodia? These are the countries that you must look into, because that's where like we are losing out big time. I don't think that politically it may be possible to change that. Overtime is one of the factors. Like, we are giving almost double the overtime. Most of the other countries are between 1.25 to 1.5. Yeah. So, yeah, Bangladesh is 150%. So Vietnam is, I think, in some states we give double, some places we give 1.5. Yeah. So again, the customer focus is very, very important out here. If I speak to anybody in Vietnam and Bangladesh, they know which customer has got how much of power, how much dam unme kitna hai, matlab how much business they can place, whether it's Walmart, Target, Gap, Kohl's, or the VF brands, PVH brands. So they really focus on that. In India, that awareness is zero. Government officials, I don't know how much they know about them, the businesses. Talking about the banks, zero idea. In Bangladesh, if I need a working loan, I just showing the orders of the customers that I'm working for. That's it, done. In India, nobody will understand that. So that's the ease of getting the finance. Same thing happens in Vietnam. When the bankers come and visit us in my factory, they look into which customers that I'm servicing and how much of order book I have from these customers. In India, we are, I think, decades behind that as of now. Banks, I'm trying. Of course, you have trained Management very well. You are the best, I think, still at least somewhat understanding, but if the officials change, then that's it. Other people don't know. So those are the biggest problem, like, sustainability, the consistency of that approach from both sides is very important. Today, we have all of you are so much, you have spent so much of time in the industry and you have learned so much and you know so much as of now. But I don't see that consistency, what happens after you, what happens before you and after you. Same thing is happening with the government also. This government is definitely much more interested in apparel. We are seeing a lot of movement. But yes, just to have that tipping point when we can think of 40 billion is yet to be met. So in this way, like, I think it will be about 22, 23 by 2030. I think some of these things are there, and sustainability, even in Bangladesh and Vietnam, there are foreign funds which are willing to give us capex at about 3-4% for green finance. So in the local Takal I'm talking about, where the interest rates are very similar to India. Of course, the international global players, they have always accessed the finance in dollar terms and in dollar interest, which has been way below the Indian rates. Who are these global players? Very important. After the Jews, the business have been now in today's world controlled by Taiwanese, few of them, but more are Koreans, South Koreans, and there are few Chinese are there. Like, there will be about top 10 to 15 companies, if you see, who are between $1 billion to $3.5 billion. We must study them if India has to be successful. Like, what are the things that how they have approached, what they have been, what's their life cycle, and how they have got the finance and the working. So yeah. Some of my thoughts, I think, very, very important to focus on the brands and the customers who can have that journey for the apparel, and how do we get the capital finance and working capital thing. End of the day is all about how am I showing the results. Yeah, more and more listed company has to be in that, so that the financing and the market caps, like India, hardly we have the retailers are there. Manufacturers, I think only 3 or 4 of them are as of now. Who are listed company and having the complete transparency. So I see that struggle also at this point of time, that market doesn't know about manufacturing. So you have to really pick up the apparel manufacturing, then you have to work in all these fronts. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Great. Thank you very much. You have given us the agenda for research. You know, the literature that we have read and are still reading, it clearly shows the flying geese phenomenon in the textile industry. May have started US and then Japan and Korea and then China and then the Bangladesh. Textile industry is the first one to take off in the manufacturing historically.
Yeah.
Creates all the employment, takes the labor from agriculture, starts doing it. And when the labor starts becoming expensive, it flies to the next country where the labor is cheap.
Just one thing, sorry,
Yeah.
interrupting. In this last 10-15 years, a lot of R&D has given a result.
Yeah.
A lot of automation,
Yep.
both for de-skilling as well as pure automation has happened.
Sure.
That's why the industry is not leaving China so easily.
Yep. Yeah.
So they are paying $800
Mhm.
as minimum wage, but still you can see that they're still holding about 30%. I don't know how Kansalji was talking about.
Well, there are many hidden subsidies in the Chinese context also, so we need to look a little deeper, not just at the labor cost, but also at the capital cost. But as Mr. Kansal was saying, when we talk about capital, it has to be real interest rather than the nominal. If their inflation is 1% or 0.5%, then even 3.5%, 4% rate of interest is equivalent to ours, where inflation is normally 5-6%. And then if capital is available at 9%, 10%, so that's we have to be careful about this real cost versus nominal cost, and then in dollars versus rupees, if the rupee is depreciating, so that's also a factor. But that's good material for us to look into the labor costs, the capital costs, and also look at the ease of doing business, because that has been highlighted quite a bit that there is a major problem. There are issues of why export raw material. You raised the question of why export cotton. The farmer says, I produce cotton. If I'm getting a better price outside, why are you stopping me? You want to take away my right and give it to them? Give me compensation. So the trade policy is on both sides. You have to win on the basis of your efficiency, not on the efficiency of the farmer. So today we have become a net importer of cotton. We were the second largest exporter of cotton in 12, 13, 13, 14.
Can I respond to this? My argument would be, yes, I mean, nobody is preventing exports of cotton, right? If you have to, you give MSP support to farmers. My point is, you should not have export promotion council supporting export of cotton. And that is something bizarre.
So that's fine in the value chain, because everybody has its own interest. If those who are producing yarn, naturally the garment people will say, why are you exporting yarn? Why are you exporting fabric? Only garments should be exported, right? Because all these things. So the question is, you give incentive at the garment level, because that's where maximum employment is created, and that can pull other sectors. But you keep those sectors of the inputs free on both sides, export as well as imports. The problem is, we say, oh, exports are good, imports are bad. Trade policy doesn't work this way. Trade policy is open on both sides. Even for the same commodity in a large country, at one port it will be imported, on the other export it is being exported. That is what trade policy is all about. So you should get, and the incentive structure, how? If you are giving higher incentives at the.
My other point was, we should not incentivize export of raw material. We are not prohibiting them from exporting, but if you incentivize that if you export raw material, you will get this kind of incentive, then I mean, it gives signal of a confused policy.
In the beginning,
Right.
all countries, major developing countries always export raw material. We were exporting iron ore. They were making steel and exporting steel. So this is how, because you can't make of the technology, it requires huge capital investments. Anyway,
I want to give one
Yeah.
example. I said, just because you mentioned this, I was on the buying side at that point of time, and I could see a lot of the Indian mills were exporting fabrics, textiles to Bangladesh.
Yeah.
If you see in your graph also, which
yeah, we are seeing that.
for that from 2014, 15, 16, like this thing was happening.
Yeah.
And after that, they made all their mills.
Yeah.
Then you have got a sharp decrease in the import into Bangladesh. Today, like, I have running Bangladesh factories, completely on Indian Bangladeshi fabrics now. We don't need any
So
more.
they integrate. But they need important from us.
They include Chinese fabric also, quite a bit.
Of course.
Bangladesh.
All right. Are there other exporters in the room? Exporters of garments in particular?
Former exporter,
Sorry?
former, not today.
Okay.
But can I speak?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And could you introduce yourself?
I shall. Sensei Raj, founder Vision India 2032, which is a capacity development / nation building movement. Came back about 2.5 years back from US, about 2 decades. But what I noticed in the conversation is that we are losing the meta perspective. So let me go back to the first speaker. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, and also the second gentleman. You two have laid out the landscape in what the profitability drives a business. So if you're not looking at the cotton exporters can of course access different markets, yeah, sure, of course, they have the right to do that. But how do you build a meta landscape? Let me go back to Italy, where the fashion industry is the monopoly in the world, and is driven by what? It's driven by the fabrics. The fabrics, of course, is manufactured by the raw materials. So they own the entire supply chain. So until and unless we don't look at owning the entire supply chain and the landscape as well, we're not getting it right. We will never be, and we'll always be playing catch up to the international markets, number one. Number two is the supply chain. You mentioned about the containers being held by the customs or whoever it is. This supply chain industry and the logistics, we have barely scratched the surface in the country. I own and operated a logistics company, although expedited logistics. My clients used to be nuclear power plants and mines as well, and also the manufacturers. Once a container is sealed, there is no way the container is going to be opened. The moment it is sealed, it's inspected, all the documents in place, and then also at the receiving end is the only time the container seal will be open, period. We have discussed this even at the logistics and the container security conference earlier as well, right in this very building, including the maritime security as well. We will never get our act right if we don't get our end to end. You spoke about mindset, sir. That's precisely what I'm talking about. Mindset to translate into operational protocols and procedures which could be implemented. Number three is the access of finance. We are not playing in the international finance markets. We are still on no way par with the big boys who own and control them. I come from a trade background. I used to manage 30 traders under me. So we are nowhere near that. Number four, the gentleman spoke about the sweatshops within the New York itself. I have visited them. And I tell you, the Hasidic Jews control and own the market, no matter where, right from the finance to the stores in which they own themselves and then also sell the apparel. So we are looking at end to end. You can look at Musk. I served with Musk as a tanker engineer. If we do not own the entire supply chain, India is not there. So we are a paper tiger at the moment, planning to, but then to get there, we have got to really get ourselves in the trenches and build this upwards. With that, thank you.
Thank you. There are different views on whether you need to control and own the entire value chain. Otherwise, many of the commodities are being made where every part of that is coming from some other part of the world. Anyway,
Mr. Gulati, that's what Chinese did. That's what, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's right.
That's what the Chinese have done.
Sure. It took 50 years of investment in doing that. Tomorrow, some big players will come Bangladesh is importing all the raw material from us and succeeding more than Nishadi.
Oh, I was there in Bangladesh as well. So I've seen Indian players setting up shops there.
Anyway, I think I need to ask more questions rather than respond.
So let me respond to the points that they have raised.
1 second, let me collect some questions.
Okay.
There is the line sitting here. You like to speak something and then I'm asking ADB because ADB is in a long partnership with the government for 7 years on the PM Mitra parks or others clusters. Yes, please.
Yeah, thanks, sir. So let me introduce myself. Myself is Nabarun Kaur. I'm representing Reliance Industries. And after the acquisitions of few companies like Alok and Syntex, we are both not only in MMA value chain, because Reliance is always getting tagged as an MMA value chain player. No, we are also in cotton because we have the largest spinning mill today in the country by after acquiring Syntex, right? And we are after acquiring Alok Industries, we are also not into the fiber and the raw material, we are also into the downstream products. Now, what is holding back the exports of MMA-based products, right? So a lot of comments and points have been made by various stakeholders, by industry friends, right? The reason is that if you see total apparel exports today, what is happening from India? Out of that total, 17% to 18% is MMA-based exports. The rest is cotton. So that means we are not into that offering of those products which have been required by a global markets. And this has been highlighted by many of the speakers, right? So we are a sales company or a marketing company. We push products which we sell. We don't manufacture products which are market one. So we are a sales organization or a sales company, not a marketing company. Now, what holding back the two main reasons why MMA industry has not grown and the ratio of MMF is now not correct. What has been told, it is currently at the mean consumption level, it is 60% MMF and 40% cotton. So it has increased from the earlier days of 25%, 30%. Now it has grown to 60%. And why it has grown? Because most of the consumption is happening in the domestic market, not in the export market. Now, what needs to be done to grow this export market is that we need world-class MMA processing capabilities. Because for certain special products like athleisure, high altitude fabrics, you need a lot of specialty fabrics, and that fabrics can be done through making fabrics, and that fabrics can be made by having world-class MMA manufacturing capabilities, which is there in Korea, which is there in Taiwan, and which is there in Turkey. And why I am mentioning these three countries? All these three countries are high-cost operating countries, right? Turkey is a very high cost operating country. In spite of that, if you see the EU share in their imports, their exports in EU share is significantly higher, in spite of having higher cost in Turkey. So the problem must be somewhere else, and we are not trying to find a solution to world-class MMA-based processing capabilities in India that will help to capture larger market share in MMA product baskets, right? And another reason which is hampering the growth of MMA industry is the inverted GST structure, which has been again highlighted. And prior to GST also, there was excise duty regime, and there was also the excise duty on MMA was 12.5%, where cotton was not charged. So these duty disadvantages has not led that much industry to come in the MMA industry, and that has been the detrimental factor, but not having a larger market share in the global market. Because we are not in the MMA product basket. Now, what is to be done for that? Now, the best part is that there has to be a collaborative approach. What does collaborative approach means? Let me give an example what Reliance does. We have an initiative called R-Reliance. What does that mean, sir? We work with the entire value chain partners. We talk with the brands, global brands, and then we try to understand what is the demand of the products that these brands are asking for. And then we try to do a reverse engineering process. That for that for garment, what sort of fabrics can be made and who can be made that everywhere. So we have identified few of the value chain partners across the value chain. So we do not restrict ourselves by only selling to yarn manufacturing companies and fabric manufacturing companies. We work with the entire value chains, and we have identified few players in the value chain. Those who are accredited means there has to be a certain standard and benchmarks to be followed to develop those facts. So we work with them, and those companies have been able to get export orders or increase their exports, which they were unable to do. So this sort of collaborative approach will help to grow the exports of MMA-based products from India to the global market. Thank you.
Thank you. Access to finance. government's access to finances through ADB. Would you like to, Madhushri?
Thank you so much, Dr. Gulati. First of all, compliments to the ICRIER team for coming up with this very comprehensive study. I'll speak very briefly about our engagement with the Government of India in the space of industrial development. So we have been working with not only the central government, but state governments as well. So at the central government level, we engage with DPIIT and NICDCL on industrial corridors and nodes. We have worked on and supported development of the Vizag Chennai Industrial Corridor, Chennai Kanyakumari Industrial Corridor, and the nodes. With state governments, we worked with the government of Tripura, government of West Bengal in upgrading their industrial infrastructure, the industrial parks. And we are also doing a number of studies in this area. So one of the pan-India studies is on industrial park rating system, where we are supporting DPIIT and Invest India in assessing not only public sector parks, but also private sector parks and SEZs on the kind of internal and external infrastructure they provide, how sustainable these parks are, and the kind of ease of doing business measures that are being provided. Apart from this, coming to the textile and apparel sector, we have recently started engaging with the Ministry of Textile broadly on areas like sustainability and modernization of the textile sector. So some of the key things that we will be working with them on is developing a national sustainable pathway for the textile and apparel sector. We'll also be engaging with them on the PM Mitra initiative, which the additional secretary just spoke about. And there also our focus will be on how to operationalize these parks and address any infrastructure, regulatory, or institutional deficiency. Apart from that, we'll also be doing some diagnostic studies on some of the major textile and apparel clusters in the country and coming up with pathways or recommendations on how to modernize these clusters. Apart from this, when we look at manufacturing in general, another area of interest for us is how to scale up MSMEs in the country. We often hear statistics like say firms in the developed countries, in the US, they sort of tend to scale up much faster. They scale up nearly 7 to 8, up by 2 to 3 times only. So then what are the key constraints or challenges which are stopping firms from scaling up? And this is very pertinent for the textile and apparel industry, as it was pointed out earlier, because most of the sector is in the unorganized or informal sector with firms which are deploying less than 10 people. And as we try to go ahead and meet these targets that we were just talking about, the 100 million and everything, it's very important for these small industries to scale up and link with the global value chains or buyers in a way that maybe Bangladesh or Vietnam has managed to do. They've managed to bring in a larger degree of infusion of foreign capital, whereas in India, a lot of it in the textile sector might be driven by the domestic capital. So this discussion has been very timely and very helpful to help us understand some of these key constraints and root causes, and also what the government is doing and the private sector views. So we look forward to hearing more of this and associating with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since you mentioned about your association in financing these parks and infrastructure, but you also mentioned about MSME. The banker of the bankers is here, RBI. So MSME is in priority sector lending, right? And that 40%, 18% agriculture and the remaining MSME. If you put them in the priority sector lending, is it an incentive to scale up or keep remaining small? So do we need to change some policy thing at the RBI level? Think about it, or if you can respond quickly. Yeah. Hmm.
I am from the foreign exchange department. So I would like to, I was discussing with Mr. Giri also that recently we have taken some steps. In fact, I have come along with few data relating to FDIs, which is not that encouraging because we have allowed almost 100% FDI in the textile sector under the automatic route. But if you see and go by the last 5 years data, we have been getting around 2,000 crores on an annual basis since 2020-21, and which went down during the COVID, but it has really picked up. But what we have seen is that FPIs has also been there in few of the major companies like Garware, Arvind, Fashions, Vardhaman and all. And but the major countries from where we have got the FDI, I'm just giving the data for the benefit of the team here. It's from the Japan around 2018 crores in last 5 years, Canada 822, Mauritius 764 crores, Singapore 406. And but along with that, I have got the data, which is the major state which has got the FDI. It is majorly the Maharashtra and the Haryana. So almost 79% of the FDI which has been received in last 5 years has gone to these two states. And also there has been a disinvestment of FDI in the last 5 years, which was very minuscule in the year 2020-21. Around only 17 crores disinvestment was there, which has risen to almost 1,906 crores in last year, 2024-25. So, which is a concern, but along with that, it's only 0.59% of the overall FDI which we are receiving is being received by the textile sector. So,
where do you rank? In fact, Mr. Kansal was mentioning that we are the second largest, country attracting FDI, which was news to me because I think what our experience was that basically, in spite of being 100% of the room, FDI the way we saw.
this is what
So where do you rank actually?
say in the textile or overall you're saying
Textile.
textile. So I mean it's very minuscule. That is what I'm saying.
That is what I thought.
Just 0.59% we are receiving. And as far as exports, as I think the sir said, it's 3 lakh crores, that's fine. And few things, I mean, regulatory actions, it's not relating to here, but I like to say the settlement of the transactions relating to the exporters are here, which we have taken in last 1 year or so. It is like sir was mentioning, I mean, we have come with our draft trade guidelines, wherein we have, delegated and rationalized many of our instructions relating to settlement of trade transactions. So,
Thank you. My team has already issued me a notice that there is a trade-off between roti and kapra. So either you want your food security or you want kapra to continue. But I'm also told Invest India is in the room and GIZ and ILO also on labor things we have talked about. So very briefly, if you like to comment, and then we will have 5-7 minutes for the open discussion. I'm sorry, we are already getting hungry. So, yeah.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for inviting us here. So we are working on the mandate of bringing investments into the textile sector, and
Nothing is coming.
See, it's mostly driven by domestic capital. What with the understanding of the industry, what we see is one is our textile industry per se. They are very happy with the domestic market. It's already around 140 billion. We are expected to reach 250 billion. We are very happy serving the domestic market. There are very few players who can actually scale up and address the export market. 90% of what we are exporting, we are first importing. So the raw material, the manufactured fiber we are talking about, which are export quality products, that's all being currently imported. Most of the technology for those fabrics are owned by Taiwan, Korea, and other countries, having set up factory in China, which has improvised on the process, and it is having monopoly. So unless until there is a good R&D, or we enter into a very conscious partnership with these big companies who own the technology for magnet fiber, the 37 billion currently in exports, which is expected to reach 100 billion, is going to be a challenge because the whole world is shipping. The whole world is shifting towards performance fabrics, which currently we are lacking big time.
Yeah.
The cotton where we are leading, still we are only scratching the surface in terms of export. Again, it's a huge market of around 30-40 billion, but we are only exporting 1 or 2 billion out of it. Right? Even then, we are only 5% of what the world is consuming.
Why can't we get Taiwanese here?
That's what we are doing. Taiwan is a friendly country. Otherwise, PM3 approvals are there, so it's very difficult. But Taiwanese, Korean is what we are reaching out. So that's the challenge. But the industry also need to, rise up. Most, except for very few industry players who have the larger vision of attracting and growing the industry, we see at the lower level, people are very happy with the performing retail, real estate assets. And so that's a challenge we are also facing.
All Maharashtra textile mills are become my competition.
So yeah, but then joint venture is something that we can look at as an industry.
Thank you. From ILO or GIZ, I'm told they are here.
No, ILO.
Yes, please,
I'm
there is a lot of discussion on labor.
Yes. I'm Bharti Birla. I'm Enterprise Development Specialist. I work in South Asia. And I've worked with government and textile supply chains for a long time. Just in the context of the overtime, because that was highlighted as one of the recommendations from the study, overtime rates are negotiated rates, which are negotiated between the employers and workers through the collective bargaining process or the social dialogue process. And what ILO prescribes is not 1.25 times. What ILO prescribes is below this, you cannot go. So this is the minimum rate, and the countries can choose to go above that rate. And it's overtime needs to be voluntary. And what we've also seen is that many times overtime is not paid. This is the global research, not really specific to textile sector or garment sector, but generally overtime payments are actually much less compared to the amount of overtime done, not just by blue collar workers, but also managers and others. One more thing that we also need to keep in mind, at one point we are talking about living wages and, the industry is talking about it. The other side, we are talking about overtime and cutting the overtime. So we need to balance these things. But what we have seen in the global research is that when there is overtime, there is also reduced productivity. And these are research-based findings. And also, there are extra costs which the companies have to bear because of the overtime, and also potential for negative impact on occupational health and safety. Many times, because of the overtime, you actually see higher rates of challenges in terms of safety and health of the workers. And also the work life and family balance. So those things need to be kept in mind. I'm talking from the ILO perspective, but we also did one research which looked at why overtime really happens. And one of the reasons is also the buying practices of the big brands. So I think it's also important to look at how the purchasing practices impact overtime, apart from the seasonality issue and apart from the fact that production needs to be done in certain season. There are other reasons why overtimes get precipitated, and one of the big challenges, lead time, the change in the requirements and that precipitating overtime. But from the other perspective, ILO also talks about looking at transitioning to formality, because it can also help the industry and allows for a level playing field. And the focus on, how we can talk about as a USP from India to talk about sustainability, because India is investing a lot on that, and sustainability is one of the things that industry is focusing on. So apart from the cost perspective, is there any other USP that we can sell to improve exports? I think that's something where we need to focus on, and responsible business conduct. Industry setting its own standard rather than looking at standards which are being driven by buyers or from other countries. Can industry think of its own standard, because that becomes a USP? Like in the parks, we are saying that everything will be compliant. So there could be a compliance which can be done with the industry rather than agreeing to buyers' requirements. So that I think we need to also look at those issues. Lastly, just want to say that in ILO is also promoting what is called as a productivity ecosystem for decent work. A lot of things that were said here today in the morning. Some countries are trying. Vietnam is trying this. BRICS as an entity, they are promoting this in many countries, including in big countries. In India, we haven't started, but there are other countries who have looked at this productivity ecosystem approach. And I think that's where we can work together to sort of address some of the issues that have been discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you. Is GIZ in the room?
Yes,
No.
GIZ is in the room, myself, Lucas
Yes,
Hero.
yes, please.
Thank you for having us today. Thank you for presenting the study as well. I'm working as an advisor for GIZ, which is the agency for international development of the German government. We're mainly funded by the BMZ, which is the Ministry for Development Cooperation. And in India, we are working in different sectors. One of them is agriculture, and I'm working in a global project that is trying to improve the situation of smallholder farmers in cotton, tea, spices, and coffee. And we're working a lot on capacity development. I think something that is really important in the scope of today's meeting is the regulations that are coming up for the European market. CSDDD has been named, and we're working closely with the CCI also to help them better understand these regulations, and especially also to maybe talking about the mindset shift, see these as opportunities. Not only, for example, you've been mentioning you have a designer in your company that this is a great asset for brands in Europe, but at the same time, these brands are struggling a lot how to cope with these regulations, also because they're not fully aware about their own supply chain. So if you're able to deliver these data points towards the regulations, I think this is a great opportunity to create USP for Indian brands as well.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room who would like to raise question, observation, but not long lecture? It's a trade-off now, your food for thought and food for stomach. So choose. Yes, Nisha. Professor Nisha Taneja has been one of the pioneers in this for decades. She had been working on textiles.
Well, that's a very generous introduction. But it takes me back to 25 years ago when Shahi, Gokuldas, and Pearl were still the largest firms in India. And that was the era of reservation. And we've seen how these firms have evolved after de-reservation. And it's such a major change. Why is it that the structure of the industry hasn't changed? It should have infused new technology. It should have changed the system of working. Everything should have changed, but it hasn't. Why is it that new firms haven't come up? Because they would have been in the non-reservation era, and their approach to production, to labor, to capital would have been very different. So I think that's one question I feel we need to look at. The other is that the way our supply chains are organized is very important, the inbound and the outbound. If we are embedded in the global supply chain, then it's a buyer-driven supply chain. And what the buyer will do is they will tell you, they will give you the design, they will tell you what kind of fabric to use, they will even tell you where to source the fabric from, where to source the zips from, where to source the embellishments from. So everything is laid out and you are getting hooked into the global value chain. So what part of our industry is actually hooked into that value chain? And what is that ecosystem? What is it that we are producing outside of that ecosystem, where we are producing and selling to the rest of the world? So I think these are questions that we need to answer. I don't need to take more time because this can go on. Thanks.
Yeah, wonderful. Liberalization has changed quite a few sectors dramatically, but this doesn't seem to be in that category. Why? You have worked with Gap and others. Well, anything?
In the end of the day, the foreign investors have not looked. I told you, the industry migrated for so many countries, but these big Koreans, Taiwanese, they have not invested in India. There was something fundamentally they find it's very complicated. I actually, during the gap days, I brought in all those global suppliers into India because my company wanted. Today, Walmart is doing that. Walmart is telling all their suppliers to supply from, to source from India. But they're not willing to invest as of yet. So the day they're ready to invest, we know that we have achieved there. Because then that means like, the EBITDA would come, the ROCE would come, the turn would come.
That's what I was going to request if you could check, because we get to hear that the return on investment is low, which is why reinvesting from the domestic suppliers is also very low. So it would be good to know if we have one of the lowest return on investment.
So I'll just give my example of my own company. It's all public knowledge. You can see in the financial results. So in the last 3 years, my company, we have grown almost 150%. That means from $200 million, we become a $530 million this year. So huge growth and very quick. It has happened in only 3 years. But how much India has grown and how much the other countries have grown. So I feel embarrassed that I'm in a platform where I have to talk about how to grow India. But my investors, my promoters won't allow me to do that unless until I show the same kind of return, ROCE and the turns.
So the domestic market is not very lucrative in terms of pricing.
No, because if you are supplying to the domestic market, then the brands of domestic doesn't need the same kind of compliance these international big brands look for. So when I'm making a factory completely compliant, that means as he's saying, like the overtime has to be paid and double. Hours by the minute has to be calculated. So those things like, jugaad kind of work, India has thrived upon. But now if you have to go into this big league and supply to this part of this big supply chain, then it has to be much more methodical. So that's how the struggle.
Suggestion, budgetary proposal we had made that if the industry reinvests and plows back its profit into the same industry, then do something tax breaks. Of course,
So, like 100% of my profit is invested, but my returns are better in Vietnam and Bangladesh than India.
They are showing me red cards at the back that they are feeling hungry. Well, we'll continue this discussion outside over lunch, but I'm so grateful, and I'm not going to summarize because there are so many issues that have been raised, which is a good input to us to keep on working. We'll prioritize whether it is the capital issue or the labor issue or the ease of doing business or branding and other things, sustainability, madam. All said and done, the game is not going to be over. It's not too bad. Domestic part is going reasonably fine. International, we have to capture and we have to think out of the box for capturing larger share. Apple, we have done wonders within 4 years, 5 years, and 80% is coming from outside. So why can't it come from outside and then we start with, yeah. So different models will come. I think we have to think about innovative policies, innovative products, customized products, and so on and so forth. Really grateful to all your comments, suggestions, and the time you have given. And the team will continue working and will keep you disturbing on those issues. Everyone is welcome for some food for stomach too. We have given enough food for thought. Thank you very much. So kind. Thank you.